and I grew up very poor. From when I was old enough to legally work, I, 19F, have had to take on multiple jobs while balancing school to help with my family and my younger sister. Growing up, I never had a lot, and whatever money I earned I would spend on my sister, 16F, and family. When I was 18 and had just been accepted into college, my dad's business that he'd worked on for the past couple of years finally took off. This also meant that my sister could now have a normal high school experience without worrying about money. While I was in college, I wasn't in contact with my sister that much since I was so busy with schoolwork. However, from our calls and her social media, I could tell she had changed completely and was involved with some bad people. She would post videos on her Snapchat of her getting drunk, smoking weed, juuling, driving while most likely drunk, high, etc. I tried reaching out to her, but she would mostly deny the claims and told me to mind my own business. At some point, she justified her actions using the argument, "This is what the cool kids do now. Not everyone was a nerd like you in high school." One of my high school friends who also has a brother in the same grade reached out to me and said that she heard that my sister was seeing a sketchy guy from another school. Apparently he sells drugs and was expelled from my sister's high school. I asked my sister about this and she denied it. Last week I got a phone call from my mom who was sobbing. She tells me that my sister is pregnant. I was so shocked that I could not speak. Then I was angry. When I was her age and even younger, I gave her everything, and so did my parents, so she could have all the opportunities her peers had. Since my dad's business became lucrative, they've given her every opportunity to succeed, any extracurricular sport she wants, academic tutoring, school activities, etc. I never got any of those things. It angered me so much that she took all of this for granted and fucked up her life. The father. Her delinquent boyfriend who got expelled and sells drugs. She blows up my phone but I don't respond. She then sends me a series of long text messages asking if she can crash at my place. She also asked me if I could make her an appointment to see a doctor. Lastly, she asked if it would be okay if her boyfriend comes and stays over sometimes. I shut her down. I told her that you dug this hole for yourself. If you allow yourself to become pregnant, then you should be able to deal with the consequences. Also, I'm currently sharing a small apartment with 2 roommates. She begged some more and I denied her. In the past few days, she's been texting me and calling me non-stop saying that she has nowhere to go and has been living in her boyfriend's car. I haven't responded to a single message of hers, but I feel my resolve wavering a bit. I fully don't support her, but maybe I'm being an asshole. Edit. To clarify, I would still never house her in my apartment. That would be extremely disrespectful towards my roommates and would get me kicked out due to the lease agreement. I meant I was considering giving in and sending her some money. Edit 2. My parents have disowned her, not kicked her out. They are refusing to acknowledge that she is their daughter, but she is still welcome to live in their house. She chose not to since my parents are absolutely fuming and probably will yell at her and criticize her, which she honestly needs. Relevant comments. John C.E. I have a feeling if you gave in, you'd just be taken advantage of by your sister and her deadbeat BF. NTA. If she is old enough to be a mommy, she needs to learn to care for herself and grow up. You also have to consider your roommates. I'm sure they'd love to have 2 more, and eventually 3, people living there. OOP, absolutely. I would never put this on my roommates. To clarify, I meant my resolve was wavering and that I might end up sending her some money, not offering to house her. That's still an absolute fucking no. Marlon Fishy NTA, she still has an option for a roof over her head and she chooses to stick it out with her loser boyfriend in his car. But your parents should not disown their daughter for this, it will only push her closer to her loser boyfriend. You should also be there for her as emotional support. Don't let her stay with you if you get in trouble with roommate/landlord, but let her know it will be okay. She made a mistake as an example and someone she can lean on. OOP, yes, absolutely. I've sent her a ton of advice including links, forums, and general information. She has chosen to ignore that advice and instead continue to ask me to live at my place. Not sure what I'll do, but I don't think I'm going to get more involved than that. Like you said, she has somewhere to go back to. She's just choosing not to because she can't take the criticism. Update post 2. It's been a little bit more than 2 weeks since my first post, and I guess it's safe to say now that the situation has been resolved in probably the best way possible. In my last post, I stated that my sister was still living in the car of her delinquent boyfriend who sells drugs and refusing to come home because my parents had disowned her. At this point, I would like to clarify that my family and I are Chinese, and it is common in Chinese culture to disown your kids when they do something that largely disappoints or embarrasses you. However, this is not a permanent disownment like many of you have brought up. As long as my sister apologizes sincerely and they can see that she is actively trying to fix her mistake and become better, they will take her back as their daughter. Another clarification would be for those people who assumed that my dad kept us poor since he was stubborn and wanted to work on his business and not get a real job. His business was a passion project on the side. My dad was working 50 hours a week at 2 jobs. Alrighty, on to what ultimately happened with my sister. Despite the chain of advice I sent her, she ignored me still. I regularly checked in with her over the next week to see how she was, and she gave me one-word replies until they ultimately stopped. I was growing concerned after she didn't pick up her cell, but then I received a call from my parents. According to my mom, my sister had returned home crying and begging for forgiveness. She had a serious talk with my parents where she apologized for her behavior and promised to make amends. My mom was very tearful as well. They scheduled a doctor's appointment for her immediately, and I believe she went in the next day. I had no idea what made her finally break and return home, so I texted her. First, I told her I was proud of her for taking action and being mature, and asked if anything happened between her and her boyfriend. At first she was pretty stubborn and kept insisting that she was just over living in a car, but after a while she finally admitted that her boyfriend had requested that she start selling for him if she wanted to keep living in his car and eating his food that he was sneaking her. LMAO. What a fucking asshole. Glad my sister finally returned to her senses. She told me she broke it off with him, and I sincerely hope that's the truth. This past Monday, she got the pills to successfully terminate her pregnancy. According to my mom, she was begging that they do it ASAP, which was really a breath of relief for all of us because we were worried she might want to keep it. The future seems pretty bright right now for her. My parents decided to pull her out of the public school and send her to a progressive private school that some of my close friends also went to. It's a fantastic school, and I think it'd be great for her. She's officially starting next Monday. I'm going to visit her and my family this weekend and see how she's doing. Edit. Forgot to add that the new school also has a wonderful counseling department. I urged my parents to speak to the head psychologist there, and they did, and she will be having mandatory weekly meetings with her and another therapist at the school. After my pregnant Sil ignored my son's severe allergy and brought peanut-based snacks into our home, I threw them out. Am I the asshole? Hello, this is a throwaway account and a repost and update of sorts because my post got taken down from the other Am I the Asshole sub. My brother and his wife Laura, who is 7 months pregnant, are staying with us for a week or so since he's interviewing for jobs in the city my family and I are in. My kids love having their aunt and uncle around, and everything's been great. Yesterday, Laura went out and came back with groceries. I thanked her but told her that we don't expect them to do this. The kitchen is stocked and that we're just enjoying having them. She said that she wanted to and that most were cravings she's been having. I started helping her unload the bags and noticed that a lot of snacks were with peanuts, cookies, crackers, PB, even some sort of cake fusion. It all made me uneasy because she knows my oldest son, 8M, is extremely allergic. I don't keep anything of the kind in our home because we've had an incident when he was younger where we almost lost him. I didn't want to be rude, but I told her that I'm not comfortable with having the stuff in the house. She told me that she would be careful, that she wouldn't eat it around him or his siblings, and that she'd clean up after herself, that she was having intense cravings and needed them. Look, I've had 4 kids and kind of get where she's coming from, although I never had to have something, but every woman is different. I made sure my son knew not to touch any of it and to leave her alone when she's eating them. That was that. Today, I woke up early to make breakfast and opened the fridge only to be greeted by strawberries dipped in PB left out without a container to chill. The PB jar wasn't sealed properly next to them, and there were sandwiches on a plate because she likes the bread cold and soggy. I was pissed. I've read enough about airborne contamination to know that you can't really determine it, but I wasn't risking it. I grabbed a bag and started throwing everything in it. Our groceries, hers, I didn't care. I was going to take the bag, drive to a shelter and let them know the situation. Laura woke up while I was on my rampage, came down and asked all upset what I was doing. I was snippy with her and didn't try to hide it. We got in an argument with her defensively saying that I can't do this, that the baby needs it, and that it's cruel to put a pregnant woman through unsatisfied cravings. I told her bluntly that I don't give a single fuck. If she can't keep to her word, then I won't either, and that she'll live without her craving. My son can't say the same with his allergy. She went back upstairs, packed her bag and came back down, grabbed the bag of food and left in a huff. My brother was at his interview and called me half an hour later to ask me what happened. He was upset with his wife but also with me because nothing happened, and at the end of the day, my son is fine. I told my husband when he came back from work and he's completely on my side. AITA, mini update. Like some people had predicted in the comments on the other sub, Laura did go straight to my family and started complaining. She hadn't twisted anything, Told them the full honest story and my mother was livid. She called me panting like she ran a marathon after she berated Laura to make sure my son is okay, so I can only imagine the riot act she read to her. Apparently, even my stepdad gave Laura one of his disapproving frowns. My brother came back in the evening to get his stuff since Laura had only packed hers for some reason. He apologized for what she did and said that he'll have a chat with her once she's calmed down. She's been inconsolable. He told me that she's been crying since she left my mom's house and that she now feels unwelcome and unloved in our family, and he blames me for it. My husband butted in and told him that it's enough. That whatever she's feeling doesn't cover half of what we felt and that she needs to get over herself. That I've been scrubbing the house from top to bottom for hours because of her actions. I did get panicky and went on to deep clean the whole house, especially the kitchen, but anyway, my brother left after he said that there's no leveling with us when we're being this stubborn. Now that I've had time to get out of the state I was in, I do feel bad that she's distressed and feels unwelcome in our family. That was never my goal. I've been debating sending her an apology, not for my actions because I stand by them, but for the way I went about it. I shouldn't have allowed the stuff in our house in the first place and could have been calmer about it after I opened the fridge. Update. A lot of people asked me to update, so here it is. Warning, this is a long one, and if I wasn't an AH before, I sure am now. So after my mom berated Laura and my brother yelled at my husband and I took the advice I was given and sent them a long text which ended up being a bit of a ramble about everything. How fucked the situation is, how we're disgusted by their stance, and how we'll be going LC until we feel ready to be around them again. That was the day after my brother packed his bags and left. I was left to read, and I thought that was that until a few days ago when I got a call from Laura. I thought about not answering it, but curiosity got the better of me. When I picked up, Laura tried to make awkward small talk, but I think she sensed I wasn't in the mood and got right to it. She apologized about her behavior, said she had no excuse other than her hormones, and we ended up having a long chat about everything. By the end of it, I actually felt better and like we could get past it and work on our relationship. She also mentioned that she would still like for my family and I to come to her birthday dinner. It wasn't going to happen in a restaurant anymore. I guess the hotel stay ended up costing them a lot, as some of you predicted, and that it was going to be at their house instead. I told her that I'll talk with my husband and get back to her. I also got a text from my brother apologizing and saying he was just trying to protect and stand by his wife. It was too soon to start mending things, as my husband pointed out, but he left the choice up to me, and I honestly believed her apology because she had never acted like that before and she seemed actually ashamed of herself. Anyway, my sister, who was also apologized to BC, she also tore her a new one. And parents also got an apology. We're also invited, but my sister's kids wanted a cousin sleepover instead of going with us, so after talking it over with my sister, we agreed for them to have one at my house. My babysitters for a year are my next door neighbors. They're sweet and responsible 16-year-old twins who live with their single mom. They usually team up and tackle my kids on date nights. There's a reason I'm mentioning this. With my sister's added 2 kids to the mix, I asked their mom if she was free to join their duo and she agreed. So I called Laura and told her that Richard and I are coming. When we got to their house, Laura greeted my husband and I at the door. We handed her the gift and went in, but she seemed puzzled that we didn't have a trail of kids with us, so I reminded her that it's just us adults tonight. Same thing happened when my sister and her husband walked in. Dinner was awkward. No matter how we tried to lighten up the mood, and the conversation was stilted at best, but I thought it was at least a step forward. Laura asked this time about why the kids were not with us, that she had made special food for them. I never mentioned the kids when I got back to her, just my husband and I, but I felt like it was my fault that I didn't clarify, and so I apologized for it and thanked her for thinking of them. My sister chimed in that her kids and mine were having a cousin sleepover tonight and how she was excited about our soon-to-be nephew to join them when he's here and older. Laura looked at her with a smile and said, "Yeah, I'm sure he'll be best friends with his cousins, as in my kids, and his step-cousins, as in my sisters." This pissed me off because we don't step anything with the kids, but I bit my tongue. For context, my sister is technically my stepsister. I know I used stepdad in my first post. I usually call him by his first name. I consider him a parental figure since he raised me since I was 10, but I had a dad and the title will always be his. My sister gave her a hurt look, but it was my brother who nudged his wife with a, "What are you doing?" look. A few minutes went by again with eating and light convo before Laura asked again about our kids, mainly who was watching them since all 4 parents are here. I told her that my neighbor and her daughters are babysitting, to which she laughed at and joked about how incompetent the girls and their mom must be to need all 3 of them to wrangle the kids. Also, for context, I have 4 kids. I'm biased and like to think they're well behaved, but there's sometimes too much for one person to handle. Even me, and I'm the one that brought them into this world. Add my sister's 2 kids and it's a lot for 2 teenage girls to handle even for just a few hours. We left at 7. It said we'll be back at 11. It has absolutely nothing to do with the girls whom my kids adore or their mom who is as kind as they come. Before I could retort anything, my mom stepped in with one of her smiles and told Laura that it's so kind of her to offer her own competence and watch the kids next time. That shut her up real fast. After that, dinner was even more awkward until we cleared the table and Laura brought out dessert while my brother got the cake from the fridge. Here's where I lost the last of my remaining brain cells. I went to the bathroom and when I came out, I saw my husband carrying my bag and trying to usher me out of the front door to leave. He looked pissed and I was beyond confused, and obviously resisted because yes, the dinner is a train wreck, but let me at least say goodbye and give a lame excuse for our departure. When my husband tried to literally carry me out, I knew something was wrong, and after a couple of tries, I darted past him back to the dining room. Laura's now ready dessert table consisted of PD cake pops, PD pie, PD cookies, PD brownies, and top it all off, a PD birthday cake that my brother brought in and was sniffing at with a horrified look. Laura then gave me a big smile and said loudly to my family, I thought I should at least get to have my cravings on my birthday. Get your fill before she throws these out too. I honestly thought for a second that my sister was going to tackle her, and I wasn't that far behind her because all I could think about was the fact that she thought my kids were coming and she planned this accordingly. I felt so guilty for allowing the stuff in our house the last time, and if my sister's kids hadn't wanted the sleepover, I was going to walk my son into danger a second time. I lost my shit. Without thinking about my actions, I grabbed Laura's head, forced her to talk towards my brother who I think was too shocked to react, and slammed her head straight into the cake. I held it down as long as I could while she flailed and told her I hope she chokes on her cravings before I let her go. I honestly wanted to go for the pie too, but I had embarrassed myself enough by acting like that in the first place, so I told my brother that I'm done with both him and his wife, and if they try to contact me or my family again, I'm filing for a protective order. Then I let my husband lead me out. My sister was cackling as she followed us with her husband, but our parents stayed back. I heard Laura screaming profanities after us, but my stepdad raised his voice, which shut her up. I got a lot of jokes about his frown on my first post, but the man is as stoic as they come. Him showing any emotion is a big deal. I remember that his frown alone growing up was enough to literally stop my sister and I in our tracks, because we knew if he gave us one that we messed up. I haven't asked my mom what happened after we left because I can't handle any more heartache from my brother or his actions. I don't think this was the update anyone wanted, least of all me, but I'm completely done with both of them. Even though my brother looked like he had no idea, the stuff was in his house, happening under his damn roof. I'm sad I won't be in my nephew's life and my kids won't get to know the new cousin they've been waiting for, but I'd rather cry over that than over my son's life. I don't expect anyone to be kind in the comments. I'm 32. I shouldn't have been so naive, and I know I shouldn't have reacted like that, and I'm going to be dealing with that with my therapist along with the guilt I'm feeling, but please take it easy on me. I'm still shaken up. I'm also looking into family therapy for my kids so they can better process not having their uncle and aunt around after them having been a close presence in their lives. Am I the asshole for calling my friend a creepy weirdo after she posted a TikTok about my husband? Original post: I, 28F, am friends with this girl. Let's call her June, also 28F. In fact, my husband, 32M, and I often hang out with June and her boyfriend, i.e. go on double dates, have weekend trips, etc. We've known each other for over 2 years. I would say that we four were pretty tight as a group, up until this weekend. My husband is an orthodontist. One of his patients is June's half-sister, Rhea, 12F. June often is the one accompanying Rhea to her dental appointments. June is also a small time for online influencers. She's always recording and vlogging and stuff. Though my husband and I have made it clear to her that we're absolutely not okay with our faces in her vlogs online, and she seemed to respect that boundary. We don't use social media, apart from Reddit, and we trusted her word when she said she's not gonna post us online. Cut to last weekend, my brother sent me this TikTok link with the message, "Dude, you gotta watch this." I opened the link and it directed me to June's TikTok account. She doesn't have much followers, less than 10K, but the particular video he sent me had like 500,000 views or likes, I'm not sure which. Lo and behold, it was a video compilation of my husband with the title "God, I See What You've Done for Others." The video was honestly the creepiest thing I've ever seen. She had recorded my husband during various of our double dates together, and it was clear he wasn't even aware he's being recorded. In some of the clips, she would start with her face and then pan the camera towards my husband with a cutesy expression and mouthing words like, "Oh my God." The worst one was where he was working on her half-sister, Rhea, wearing scrubs, and she'd recorded even that. She didn't even bother to blur out the kid's face while she was lying on the dental chair. I showed the video to my husband and he was horrified. He said it made him so uncomfortable and violated knowing that someone had been secretly recording him. He was angry that she'd recorded him working on a patient. He texted her asking to take down the video and delete every video she has of him. First she feigned ignorance, then she said that she meant no harm and that it was all for online engagement, since, I quote, TikTok with hot guys go viral very fast, and that she'd gained a lot of followers after posting that. This was also weird, but my husband and I got our families and friends to report the video and thankfully it's being taken down now. This pissed off June and she sent me a long-ass text saying how I was jealous of her online success and that I couldn't stand seeing her succeed, blah blah blah. I replied saying you're delusional and unhinged. You're not successful and you'll never be. Stay away from us, you creepy weirdo. Now she's all weepy and depressed and has been telling our common friends how mean I was to her. She's also been posting about mental health on her socials and about how mean some women are with their words, lol. AITA has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA relevant comments commenter. NTA. You and your husband had set clear boundaries and she violated those boundaries. This shows that she doesn't respect you at all. I recommend cutting her off entirely, as anyone who disturbs your peace is not worth your time. OOP. Yes. We're cutting her off entirely. I don't know if her boyfriend is aware of this or not, but I guess he'll have to be collateral damage cause I don't want her to weasel her way back into our lives. Commenter 2. NTA. People who think online engagement is more important than basic human decency are sadly not at all uncommon, and they are, as you say, delusional and unhinged. Their success is not real, and except in a very few cases, it never will be. OP, it's psychotic honestly. My husband is so freaked out about this. I feel so bad for him. Commenter 3. He might need to drop the half-sister as a patient and/or tell the parents that she, June, is not allowed to accompany her anymore. I agree that is a creepy weirdo. If she can't get followers or likes without lying and getting consent for people to be recorded, then she needs to find a new career. OOP, yes, he's in the process of informing her parents. I don't think he's gonna drop her as a patient as her treatment is almost done and it's gonna be a hassle for her to find a new orthodontist. Commenter 4. He needs to ban her sister, your former friend, RL, from the room while he is treating the patient. He needs to have a female staff member assist him and act as chaperone should your friend try to make baseless accusations. OOP. There's a rule in his practice that a female dental assistant has to present whenever they, the male doctors, are working on female patients, as most of the patients are young kids, teens, and they might be more comfortable with a woman around. Even in the video she posted, there is a woman assisting my husband. He's reached out to the kids' parents. They're being given two choices. Either they chaperone their daughter or they need to find a different orthodontist. I really hope it doesn't come to baseless accusations though. Update. I don't want to make another post for the same thing and I doubt I'm going to be updating again. My husband's practice reached out to Raya's parents and informed them about the situation via an email, as they wanted everything documented, like I mentioned in the comments. The parents have responded. They are shocked and very, very apologetic. They have agreed to chaperone Raya on her appointments instead of June. They wanted to meet my husband personally to apologize, but he informed them that that won't be necessary. June's TikTok video is still in the process of being taken down. No new updates on that. I guess she contested the reports or something. I'm not entirely sure. My husband and I have blocked her. My brother is keeping an eye on her account though, just in case she posts something else about us. We'll see what to do when it happens. We're gonna be consulting a lawyer if she bothers us again in the future. My husband is kinda shaken up / upset / annoyed about this whole thing. He's taken some days off from work and so have I. We'll plan a trip somewhere maybe, to take his mind off of these things. Right now I need to be there for him. I won't be posting anything for now. We haven't contacted her boyfriend yet. My husband is not in the right headspace right now and I feel it'll be better if we focus on ourselves for the time being. We don't want the added headache of how the boyfriend will react if he's in on this or whatever. We'll inform him after some time. I know this is selfish, but I think it's for the best. Thank you all for the responses. New update. We thought the drama was done, but nope. We filled June's boyfriend in on everything, and he was shocked, hurt, and confused. Turns out, June managed his social media, and he had no clue what she was posting. He thanked us, and we thought that was it. But then he asked to meet up, saying he needed to discuss something. To be honest, we were extremely hesitant to meet with him. We were so done with the drama and didn't want to get sucked back in. But he seemed genuinely concerned and willing to listen. So we agreed. At the meeting, he revealed he'd confronted June. She broke down, professed her love, and claimed her obsession with my husband was for social media clout. Apparently, his total package made for great content. When he asked to see her phone, she refused. So he checked her laptop and found hundreds of sneaky photos and videos of my husband. And for laughs, she had pics of me looking my absolute worst, mouth open while eating, weird faces, the works. I think I'm pretty good looking, but these photos were the opposite. It's like she wanted to prove a point about my husband's ugly wife. June's boyfriend dumped her. But honestly, we're even more freaked out now. The scale of her obsession is terrifying. Hundreds of photos and videos. That's not just a crush, that's fixation. The thought of her escalating to something more is keeping us up at night. As a small consolation, June's boyfriend made her delete the videos from her social media and laptop. But God knows how many more copies she has. Despite June not reaching out after all this went down, we're still on high alert. Her radio silence is kinda unnerving, and we're bracing ourselves for whatever might come next. Hopefully it is in fact just for social media clout, not some weird baby reindeer type obsession with my husband. It's kinda unsettling how she was friends with me for over 2 years. We hung out often. We've gone on weekend trips with her and her boyfriend. We have so many mutual friends, and yet no one knew she's doing this behind our backs. Either I'm bad at reading people or she's very good at being sneaky and deceptive. I'm also mentally kicking myself for not realizing that someone was taking pictures of me. I feel my husband and I both need to be less dumb and more aware of our surroundings, lol. On a brighter note, Raya's parents are super thankful to my husband for still treating Raya after everything. That's it for now. Hopefully, this is really the end. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Just be careful, OP. Jane sounds unhinged. Oh, OP. We are. It's kinda scary though because she knows where we live / where we usually hang out / where I work / where my husband works. Commenter 2. Man, this is some serious soap opera level drama like you said though. Better to stay aware. No one likes being caught off guard. Hopefully it ends soon and you can move on. At least the parenting situation seems good. OP. Raya's parents are wonderful. They were the ones who used to initially accompany Raya to her appointments. They said June told them that she wants to spend more time with Raya and she's otherwise busy so she could be the one chaperoning her. They had agreed because Raya was excited about spending time with her sister. It's really shitty that June was using Raya as a ruse to get near my husband NGL. Commenter 3. Wow, just wow. I would take all the evidence and a statement from the ex to a lawyer and get some type of restraining order requiring her to stay away and remove all social media of you two. She seems unhinged and needs to stay away. This makes me think of a stalker movie and you guys need to change stuff before the movie has a bad ending. OOP, we're gonna be talking to a lawyer to see what options we have. Our apartment has 24-hour security, so I doubt she can do anything there. I'm more worried about our workplaces, TBH. New update. I really didn't want to update this situation, but things have taken a seriously dark turn. When I posted about June's thing for my husband a month ago, I thought it was just some weird crush. Now, it's flat out terrifying. The day after my last post, my husband got a super creepy message from a random number. You have got it all wrong. Please meet me. I'll make you understand. We freaked. Lawyers and cops are on it, trying to get a restraining order. Both our workplaces have ramped up security, and we've warned friends and family to keep an eye out. This whole thing is destroying my husband's mental health. He's anxious 24/7, wondering if he's being followed. He stopped going to work because the feeling of being watched is overwhelming. We're trying to prioritize his safety. And honestly, it's breaking my heart. The other night, he broke down in tears. I've never seen him cry before. It was shattering. He's been talking to a therapist online, trying to cope with the stress and anxiety. But even that's not easing his mind. He's consumed by fear for my safety, constantly worrying that June will harm me to get to him. We're covering our bases, security cams, dash cams, the whole works. And I've scoured our home twice for any hidden devices. Thank God, all clear. If things get worse, we're prepared to get up and move. Honestly, it's better to have a life in a different state than to be dead here. It's heartbreaking to think about leaving our friends, family, and everything behind, but we'll do what it takes to stay safe. Some of the advice on here was really helpful, and I've done most of what was suggested. If anyone, has any more insights, please share. I'm desperate at this point, TBH. My entitled mom tried to take my house from my pregnant sister, claiming she deserves it more than I do. I am a boy who is 31 years old, and I have a sister who is 28 years old. He has always been my mother's favorite child, but he has never been my father's favorite child. In the years that I was a teenager, my parents divorced because my mother had an affair with a former boyfriend from high school. Unfortunately, my sister was her little mini-me, and she has always been domineering, manipulative, and narcissistic. She has always presented herself in this manner. Additionally, it appeared as though our mother believed that she had complete control over me. When she snapped her fingers, she would give me orders like a dog. She would do this consistently. Despite the fact that it was humiliating, my sister never stopped supporting her. It should come as no surprise that following the divorce of our parents, I moved in with my father on a full-time basis, while my sister continued to reside with my mother. Unless it was about money, the two of them were very similar to one another, and they did not communicate with my father very often. In spite of the fact that I am more like my father, he was more business-oriented and started teaching me how to handle his field of work when I was 16 years old for the first time. I became fairly skilled at it, and after working for my father for a period of 12 years, I was promoted to the position of partner in his company. A terrible event occurred approximately 8 months ago, and everything were going swimmingly up until that point. My father's immune system had been compromised for a significant portion of his life due to his heavy smoking habit, and he passed away at the age of 60 after contracting C-19 a few years before his death. After my father's burial, which was held in a socially distant location, I finally got to meet my mother and sister for the first time in years through a video call. It was my father's decision to be cremated, and he was buried at a nearby cemetery. Hence, there was neither a body nor a casket there. Despite the fact that my sister seemed to be in mourning, my mother remained nonchalant during the entire process, which surprised me. When she last saw my father, she yelled at him that he owed her more money and threatened to sue him, to which he left. She then threatened to start a lawsuit against him. In terms of alimony and child support, he had simply paid the minimum amount that was mandated by the law. He even made a contribution of $30,000 to the education fund for my sister. However, a judge's order meant that he was no longer legally had to provide my mother money 10 years after the divorce. This legal obligation had been lifted. Not even close to being broke. She has been working at the same job for about 30 years. She is the owner of the old family home that we used to share, and she routinely leases out 2 of the rooms in the house to use as Airbnb rentals. She does not have any problems with her finances. The reading of my father's will took place after the funeral. Apparently, he was under the impression that if his habit of smoking excessively would not end his life, then something else would, and he even laughed about it on a video that had been recording beforehand. To a large extent, he left everything to me, including his home, all of his assets, and the majority of the income from his business. In addition to around $10,000 in cash, he left my sister a Nissan Altima from the year 2015. In addition to a few other goods that she had claimed to be hers since the divorce, my mother was only given a sum of $1,000. Additionally, I was given the remaining portion of it, and my girlfriend is currently residing with me in the house that my father had bequeathed to me. Following the completion of 2 years of community college, my sister moved in with her boyfriend and began working online part-time for a number of years. A heartbreaking miscarriage occurred at the time period, despite the fact that she became pregnant. Due to the fact that we had almost little communication with one another and no one informed me of this, I did not become aware of it until after the funeral. When lockdown occurred, her boyfriend's job began to gradually downsize, and soon he was only able to work part-time. This brought about a negative impact on both of their finances, to the point where he finally informed her that she needed to look for better employment as well because he was looking for a second job. After then, she fell pregnant once more. Despite the fact that she and her partner have taken precautions, others continue to refer to her child as a miraculous baby. A knock on my door came as a complete surprise to me one evening. As soon as I responded, both my mother and my sister greeted me with a frigid reception. Both of them entered without anyone asking them to, and they immediately made themselves at home in my living room. A look of bewilderment was exchanged between my girlfriend and I questioned as to the reason why they had brought themselves to visit. It appeared as though my sister was giving herself a tour of my home as she was laughing and looking around, opening doors. The request for a refreshing bottle of water was made by my mother, who had just sat down on my sofa and reached out with her fingers. After my girlfriend had gotten the water for her, I questioned as to the reason that they were in this location. It appeared as though my sister was overjoyed, but she chose to ignore me and proceed with her investigation of my home. A short while later, I was able to hear her exclaim, "Mommy, it's perfect!" from the opposite end of the corridor. Yes, she continues to refer to her as Mommy. My mother ultimately stood out and said, "Well, I think it's time you did your brotherly duty." To which I reacted, "What?" I was surprised by her statement. My mother continued by saying, "Now that your father has passed away, this house ought to have been given to me because I was his only spouse. However, you are still able to make the necessary repairs at this time. It is possible for you to get a brand new home because you generate a lot of money. This one is particularly significant for your sister because she is the one who is actually carrying the baby that is on the way. On the other hand, if you are adamant about remaining, you could just live in a single room and pay for all of the expenses until you make the decision to leave." After reading a sufficient amount of Reddit, my girlfriend and I were able to determine where this was headed and what would occur if I allowed it to continue. I suppose you could say that we were mentally prepared for what was to come. I inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly before uttering out loud, "That is not effing happening. Especially in my own home, you do not have the authority to boss me around. And yeah, I do make a lot of money, but just like my father, I'm going to put it away until I really need it, even though you don't seem to care about it." "Stop!" my mother yelled as she began to lash out at me with her fingers, just like she had done in the past. "It is me, your mother. Because I'm the one who brought you into this world, and because I am the one who holds authority here, you will do as I say. God is what I am to you. In other words, when I say jump, you respond by asking, how high? In all actuality, this house belongs to me, and your sister will be living here. The following is an official notice of eviction. On the other hand, because I am a good person, I will give you 2 weeks to start packing your belongings and transferring the deed to me. I have a thought that goes something like this. This can't possibly be true." Then, however, I reached for my mobile phone and started making calls. Suddenly, my mother jumped up and asked, "What are you doing?" while she was standing there. I answered by saying, "I'm gonna do what I should have done as soon as this started. I'm calling the cops to get you out of my house." My phone was eventually knocked out of my hands as she started swiping back and forth toward me. After that, she made an attempt to walk on it, but I was able to grasp it before she could do so. "That's it. If you don't leave, I'll force you out." My mother gave me a slap across the cheek, and I returned the favor by hitting her back with a backhand blow that was twice as powerful, causing her to fall back down onto the couch. She yelled, "How dare you!" while placing her hand over her face, which was reddening and covered with makeup. She was completely taken aback by the situation. I went back to dialing my phone and informed her that I would call the authorities to remove her from the premises if she did not cooperate with my request to leave. I was in the middle of a conversation with my sister when she suddenly jumped in between us, stretched out her arms, and told me to do the right thing for once in my life and be a good big brother. I lost my temper and yelled out, "Oh, so you think I'm a terrible sibling? I have been required to work for a living ever since I was a very young teenager. I was responsible for all of the housekeeping, while you spent the entire day sitting on your butts, either playing video games on your computer or chatting with your circle of friends. And you would take the money that I had worked so hard to get in order to go shopping after you had already spent all of your allowance. You are nothing but a thief and a piece of a leech. Absolutely nothing is owed to you. I want both of you to leave this place as soon as possible before I dial the final number." For the first time, my sister started crying like a baby and said, "Mommy, please make him stop." After that, my mother started giving her a death gaze, after which she began hugging her and caressing her cheeks. After that, she mentioned, "You know, if you do call the cops, I can just tell them you hit me." It appeared as though she had become more intelligent. In addition, who knows, maybe I'll let everyone know that you wanted to do something far worse to a pregnant woman who was in need of assistance. It is not something that I believe would be beneficial for you to do. It was with a raised hand that I was able to interrupt her and say, "Just stop." During the entire time, my girlfriend has been recording, in case you haven't noticed previously. This indicates that we have video evidence of you assaulting me first and then publicly declaring that you would lie to the police during the incident. I don't believe that would be beneficial to your reputation at work or for your Airbnb business, which is relatively tiny. In the event that appearances could kill, my mother would have blown me up like a tactical nuclear weapon. Nevertheless, she quickly regained her composure and started pulling my sister into the room by the arm. My younger sister, who was behaving like a complete and utter child, managed to escape our mother's grasp and immediately plopped down on my front step while throwing a fit. "Are you able to see now?" I questioned my mother after giving her a quick glance. "The result of the spoiled upbringing she had from you is this." After she had finished staring at me, I watched as my mother attempted to remove my sister from the front steps of my house. On the other hand, my sister grabbed to the handrail of the porch and cried out, "You promised me," over and over again. As I stood by the door, I laughed and yelled out to each of them, "Never come back." At that moment, my mother reprimanded me and returned to the task of getting my sister off the porch. Despite the fact that it took her a few minutes, she was ultimately successful in persuading my sister to get up and leave with her. She referred to me as a cruel and heartless jerk who will go to hell for this. I chuckled once again and responded, "There's also a special place in hell for liars and narcissists who try to manipulate others to get their way." I simply put up my smartphone once more with the recording and said, "The clock is ticking, Mom." This caused my mother to tighten her fists and was ready to yell something more when I did so. "Get off my property." After that, my mother accompanied my sister to the car, gave me one more look that was condescending, and then disappeared into the distance. I had the impression that that was the final chapter, but my mother never let things go for good. A few days later, I started receiving messages from people I knew and family members who were using the internet. A good number of them were furious with me, while others merely had inquiries about what was being placed. Due to the fact that both my sister and my mother had blocked me on social media, I was unable to view what they were saying on my Facebook account or see what they were saying. My girlfriend, on the other hand, was able to view everything because they had their profiles open. The entire incident was captured on screen, and some of it was printed out. Both of their profiles contained entries that referred to me as a self-centered and cruel jerk who stole the house that was meant to be my sister's inheritance right in front of her eyes by paying off the attorney who handled Dad's estate. This is a total and utter lie, and both of them are aware of it. I called my attorney, who was also my father's attorney and a trusted family friend, and gave him copies of all the screenshots from Facebook as well as the video that my girlfriend had filmed on the day that my mother ordered that I move out of my house. My intention was to take it a step further, so he wrote them a letter instead of sending a simple cease and desist letter. He wanted to write a letter. I advised him to send it by express mail that required a signature in order to determine whether or not they had got it. It was on the same day that the letter arrived that my mother called me in an angry state. I warned her that if she and my sister did not remove all of the false social media posts they made about me and reveal the truth, I would send an email to her entire family, her boss, and upload the videos we captured of her online. In addition, I would sue her on top of everything else that I had done about the situation. She accused me of being crazy by claiming that she had only done what she did for the sake of my sister. She then proceeded to give a full-fledged lecture, during which she reiterated her belief that my sister still required my house more than I did. I made it abundantly apparent that I did not care what she believed, and I warned her that her career would be ended if she did not remove everything and reveal the truth. It was with reluctance that she responded, "Fine, you win." After hanging up the phone, he commented, "You should keep the stupid house." At that very moment, every single dishonest post that had been made on their profiles disappeared. I was unblocked, and my mother presented me and everyone else with a half-hearted apology, explaining that she had hurried what she said because she believed that my sister required my house more than I did due to the fact that she is pregnant and broke. On the other hand, she admitted that the house was legally mine according to the will that my father had left behind, and she was aware of this fact before he passed away. Therefore, she had no right to attempt to claim it. In addition, my sister expressed her regret, but she virtually reiterated everything that our mother had said. She stated that she had just agreed with her beliefs and then blamed what she had done on our mother and the pregnant emotions that she was experiencing. The answers came in on both my mother's and sister's pages for a period of time, and a significant number of people were depressed by the fact that they attempted to seize my house. I received a lot of sorries and my bads from people who had previously believed her, but all it did was show me who was more on her side in the first place, because they were also willing to swallow her nonsense. I could not believe it. Regardless, the majority of them were members of her family's side of the family. She was not believed by anyone on my father's family, and they were vocal about their lack of belief. In the end, my sister and her boyfriend decided to move in with our mother in order to save money. Nevertheless, she kept them in the basement in order to maintain the operation of her Airbnb. Due to the fact that my mother barely wrote anything due of the trick she had played earlier, my sister started sobbing on social media about how she is unable to live upstairs. I am very certain that the two of them are arguing because all my sister did after that was complain online. Having made it this far, you are only getting started with what is ahead. The second part is very hot and wilder than the first. It is going to be the very next video that is uploaded, so if you haven't already done so, subscribe to YouTube with notifications turned on so that you don't miss it, and give it a thumbs up as a backup. When the sister and mother came at the OP's apartment, the first peculiar thing that stuck out to me as being too obvious to look away from was the fact that they were there. Based on my understanding of the circumstances, the brother believed that the mother had just told her, "It's a done deal, you're getting this house," and the sister had believed it for some reason. This is the only interpretation I can come up with. It is either the case that the sister is so naive that she believes that the mother has the authority to take the property away from the owner and give it to her, regardless of who owns the house, or that the mother simply lied and made up some kind of reasoning as to why the house was rightfully hers. I thought the mother's notion was a terrible one. She essentially told him, "It's time to do your brotherly duty." And she believed that he would just hand up the house by that point. The father spent the most of his life working on this house in order to ensure that it would be a generational heirloom once he was able to hand it down to his son. On the other hand, the situation in which the daughter only receives the automobile and the son, the OP, receives everything else is one that I could imagine being somewhat irritating. That may be a source of frustration. I am able to acquire that, but it does not alter the fact that certain individuals are given what. That viewpoint cannot be rationalized in any manner, at least not in the way that they look to be doing here. This recurring motif can be seen throughout the entirety of Part 2. Although Part 2 is rather lengthy, you can still observe parts of that line of reasoning in that section as well. In light of the fact that the girlfriend was filming the entire event in which they struck each other, I have a sneaking suspicion that the OP's girlfriend was not recording their interaction at all. It is possible that she merely yes-anded the scenario, participating in the situation in an improvised manner and saying, "Yeah, it was recording the whole time." There was not an excessive amount of defensiveness displayed by the OP and his girlfriend when the mother and sister came. To put it simply, they were perplexed. In conclusion, the mother's exact statement, which was by far the most peculiar component of the entire incident, was as follows: "I am God." In other words, when I say jump, you define the height at which you want to jump. This house is rightfully mine. You are attempting to convince someone to give you something that you believe you deserve for some reason because you were this person's previous spouse, despite the fact that you divorced 10 years ago. It is weird that you're referring to yourself as God in the middle of an argument. Karen demands VIP table claiming to know the owner, but I'm the owner, and she was left crying with a $4,000 bill after my revenge. Karen storms into the restaurant, screaming that she knows the owner and that we must give her and her group of pals the VIP table reserved for celebrities. The trouble is, I own the restaurant and have no idea who this lady is. But I decided to play along and see what happened. During the dinner, one of the girls asked me whether I thought my life was meaningless because I worked as a waiter. That's when I realized all bets were out, and I was going to exact my retribution. This is what I did. This occurred around Christmas and New Year's. My grandparents emigrated to Canada from Italy in the 1970s and established a restaurant. When they died, my parents took over the restaurant, which they grew and enlarged throughout the decades. I've been working at the restaurant since I was 15. As my parents became older, they retired and became snowbirds, spending the winters in Florida. They sold the restaurant to me a few years ago, but they kept a tiny percentage of the stock as a supplementary source of income in addition to their savings. As soon as I took possession, I modernized the old place. I rebuilt the restaurant, altered the logo, and contacted local and national newspapers to place advertisements. I invited food critics, bloggers, and vloggers. It was slow at first, and I began to fear that the loan I took out to undertake all of this was the worst mistake I'd ever made, that I had ruined 3 generations of a family company. But soon, it began to work. A local semi-famous YouTuber included us in one of his videos, which prompted more people to visit and review us. Even on a Monday, we were quickly seeing 5 to 10 times the regular volume of activity. We became a destination for large events, and it was not uncommon for a celebrity to stop up on certain evenings. I even invited certain high-profile clients to visit and cook for our guests. This cost a fortune, so we were completely filled for the holidays. People had to make reservations in July to get a table in December. It took years to get to this point. When things become busy, I don't simply sit in the back office. I'm on the floor doing whatever needs to be done, whether it's greeting customers, bussing tables, or mopping the floors. On nights with high-profile guests or events, I wear a jacket and take charge. One night, 6 women walked in. 5 of them appeared to be in their early 20s, with the leader looking to be in her mid-20s. My best assumption was that she was an elder sister of one of the females or an older sorority sister to incoming college students. I was greeting them at the entrance, and as they approached, Queen Bee Karen was telling the baby Karens how fantastic this restaurant is, how delicious the cuisine is, and how there might even be celebrities there. When she approached me, she explained that she required a table for 6. I responded, "Of course, can I get the name on the reservation?" She stared at me. She responded, "Oh, I didn't make one, but it's okay. The owner is a personal friend of mine. He said he always keeps 1 or 2 tables open for special guests, and we can have one of those tonight." This is true for many high-profile restaurants, and I've been doing it recently as well. But I had no idea who this woman was, and she had never discussed any of this with me. I understood she was attempting to get in without a reservation, but she had chosen the worst person to try this with. I told her, "I am sorry, but we cannot seat anyone without a reservation. As you can see, we do not have any seats available." I didn't want to go all out and say, I'm the owner, and we have never spoken before, so I never promised you anything. But I didn't want to embarrass her in front of the other girls she was with at the time. She then instructed one of the other girls to take a picture of me. She announced that she would speak with the owner and ensure that I was either scrubbing toilets or fired by the end of the week. The other girls behind her joined in, saying things like, yeah, kiss your minimum wage job goodbye. I wasn't sure if they were in on it with her or if they truly believed she knew the owner. Queen Bee Karen then said, look, you can either give us a table or I can make your life very difficult. This is not worth losing your job. She kept pointing, trying to belittle me, and then saying things like, obviously you aren't anyone here, because if you were, you would know who I am and never try to tell me anything other than yes or, of course. She was constantly attempting to put me down and take that table. At this time, it had been a hard day for me, and from my perspective, I had 3 options. Number 1, I could inform her that I am the owner and call her out on all of this. Number 2, I could simply hand her the table and let things go. Or, third, I could teach Queen Bee Karen and her minions a lesson. I selected option 3. I smiled at her and said, of course ma'am, please follow me. I handed her one of the 3 tables we leave free in case a celebrity walks in, which occurs occasionally. I told her, I apologize for everything and you're right, it would be simpler just to give you the table. I also assured her that the first 3 rounds of drinks would be free. I seated them down and personally served them. As they sat, I told them, we need one of your credit cards and IDs just to keep on file, and we'll return them to you before you leave. Queen Karen handed me her card and informed the baby Karen minions, tonight is on me. I took their orders, gave them their free beverages, and informed them that due to how busy we were tonight, the meal may be delayed. The females only worried about the free drinks. They ordered 3 rounds and still hadn't received any food. They eventually called and asked me to check on it, all while giving me the worst attitude since they arrived. I told them I will look into it, but also asked if they wanted additional drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds. They were sloshed by the time the appetizers arrived, having done nothing but drink on an empty stomach for the majority of the night and just eating salads. As more food arrived, more beverages were ordered. What these girls didn't realize was that they were at our VIP table, which normally costs a few $1,000s to sit at. Karen demands VIP table claiming to know the owner, but I'm the owner, and she was left crying with a $4,000 bill after my revenge. Karen storms into the restaurant, screaming that she knows the owner and that we must give her and her group of pals the VIP table reserved for celebrities. The trouble is, I own the restaurant and have no idea who this lady is. But I decided to play along and see what happened. During the dinner, one of the girls asked me whether I thought my life was meaningless because I worked as a waiter. That's when I realized all bets were out, and I was going to exact my retribution. This is what I did. This occurred around Christmas and New Year's. My grandparents emigrated to Canada from Italy in the 1970s and established a restaurant. When they died, my parents took over the restaurant, which they grew and enlarged throughout the decades. I've been working at the restaurant since I was 15. As my parents became older, they retired and became snowbirds, spending the winters in Florida. They sold the restaurant to me a few years ago, but they kept a tiny percentage of the stock as a supplementary source of income in addition to their savings. As soon as I took possession, I modernized the old place. I rebuilt the restaurant, altered the logo, and contacted local and national newspapers to place advertisements. I invited food critics, bloggers, and vloggers. It was slow at first, and I began to fear that the loan I took out to undertake all of this was the worst mistake I'd ever made, that I had ruined 3 generations of a family company. But soon, it began to work. A local semi-famous YouTuber included us in one of his videos, which prompted more people to visit and review us. Even on a Monday, we were quickly seeing 5 to 10 times the regular volume of activity. We became a destination for large events, and it was not uncommon for a celebrity to stop up on certain evenings. I even invited certain high-profile clients to visit and cook for our guests. This cost a fortune, so we were completely filled for the holidays. People had to make reservations in July to get a table in December. It took years to get to this point. When things become busy, I don't simply sit in the back office. I'm on the floor doing whatever needs to be done, whether it's greeting customers, bussing tables, or mopping the floors. On nights with high-profile guests or events, I wear a jacket and take charge. One night, 6 women walked in. 5 of them appeared to be in their early 20s, with the leader looking to be in her mid-20s. My best assumption was that she was an elder sister of one of the females or an older sorority sister to incoming college students. I was greeting them at the entrance, and as they approached, Queen Bee Karen was telling the baby Karens how fantastic this restaurant is, how delicious the cuisine is, and how there might even be celebrities there. When she approached me, she explained that she required a table for 6. I responded, "Of course, can I get the name on the reservation?" She stared at me. She responded, "Oh, I didn't make one, but it's okay. The owner is a personal friend of mine. He said he always keeps 1 or 2 tables open for special guests, and we can have one of those tonight." This is true for many high-profile restaurants, and I've been doing it recently as well. But I had no idea who this woman was, and she had never discussed any of this with me. I understood she was attempting to get in without a reservation, but she had chosen the worst person to try this with. I told her, "I am sorry, but we cannot seat anyone without a reservation. As you can see, we do not have any seats available." I didn't want to go all out and say, "I'm the owner, and we have never spoken before, so I never promised you anything." But I didn't want to embarrass her in front of the other girls she was with at the time. She then instructed one of the other girls to take a picture of me. She announced that she would speak with the owner and ensure that I was either scrubbing toilets or fired by the end of the week. The other girls behind her joined in, saying things like, "Yeah, kiss your minimum wage job goodbye." I wasn't sure if they were in on it with her or if they truly believed she knew the owner. Queen Bee Karen then said, "Look, you can either give us a table or I can make your life very difficult. This is not worth losing your job." She kept pointing, trying to belittle me, and then saying things like, "Obviously you aren't anyone here, because if you were, you would know who I am and never try to tell me anything other than yes or of course." She was constantly attempting to put me down and take that table. At this time, it had been a hard day for me, and from my perspective, I had 3 options. Number 1, I could inform her that I am the owner and call her out on all of this. Number 2, I could simply hand her the table and let things go. Or, third, I could teach Queen Bee Karen and her minions a lesson. I selected option 3. I smiled at her and said, "Of course, ma'am, please follow me." I handed her one of the 3 tables we leave free in case a celebrity walks in, which occurs occasionally. I told her, "I apologize for everything, and you're right, it would be simpler just to give you the table." I also assured her that the first 3 rounds of drinks would be free. I seated them down and personally served them. As they sat, I told them, "We need one of your credit cards and IDs just to keep on file, and we'll return them to you before you leave." Queen Karen handed me her card and informed the baby Karen minions, "Tonight is on me." I took their orders, gave them their free beverages, and informed them that due to how busy we were tonight, the meal may be delayed. The females only worried about the free drinks. They ordered 3 rounds and still hadn't received any food. They eventually called and asked me to check on it, all while giving me the worst attitude since they arrived. I told them I will look into it, but also asked if they wanted additional drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds. They were sloshed by the time the appetizers arrived, having done nothing but drink on an empty stomach for the majority of the night and just eating salads. As more food arrived, more beverages were ordered. What these girls didn't realize was that they were at our VIP table, which normally costs a few $1,000s to sit at, but I didn't charge them for it. Except for the first 3 rounds, I charged them for all of the extremely costly cocktails they had throughout the evening. Furthermore, the table they were sitting at, as previously stated, was VIP, thus the menus were different. Prices are not displayed on these menus. This is a restaurant industry trade secret. They also offered higher-end menu items such as white truffle, black caviar meals, and specially imported West Coast oysters, among others. At one point during the night, I honestly began to question what I was doing. I worried I was going too far with these poor girls. They might not know any better. But certain things encouraged me throughout the night, such as when one of the baby Karens questioned whether I thought my life was pointless because all I ever became was a server. Also, one of the other staff told me that they were planning how to mess with me, believing that they could do so whenever they wanted and that I would always give them a table. I overheard them say, "He's cute, but I wouldn't date a waiter like that. He is such a pushover." There were other comments like that throughout the night, so I continued with their life lesson. By the end of the night, each female had built up a bill ranging from $500 to $600. I handed Queen Karen the bill for $4,232.23, which included tax and tip. I've never seen somebody sober up this soon. She went from smiling and giggling with her buddies to, "My new landlord enters without permission, removes my curtains, and even calls me sweetie. What should I do? New landlord hates privacy." I recently found myself needing a month-to-month lease for between 6 months to 14 months in Baltimore, which I was unfamiliar with. The apartment I found is a small efficiency in an older building. They agreed to a standard lease for the first 6 months, followed by month-to-month lease. I was to be the first tenant. When I toured it 6 weeks ago, workers were painting the rooms. The landlord's son is living upstairs, and this is my landlord's first time renting. The lease was obviously pulled from a form and seems standard. There is a clause in the lease which states that I can't install curtains, rods, or hooks. This seems standard as well. I had something similar at my old apartment. I assumed there would be some sort of curtain provided, and this was in regards to additional curtains. I moved in on Sunday and found the landlord had not installed curtains at all. At this point, I assumed the issue with curtains was the potential to damage the wall. So I bought tension rods that require no hardware and used them to hang curtains. Monday afternoon, I got a text from my landlord saying I needed to remove the curtains. The building is on a street corner with a fair amount of foot traffic. Between the 4 windows, you can see all of my apartment with the exception of the portion of the bathroom with the toilet and tub. Not only does this mean I have no privacy, but the neighborhood is slightly sketchy after dark. The nearby buildings have bars on their windows. Anyone passing by not only can see my possessions, but whether or not I am home. I expressed this to the landlord in my reply over text. He replied to reread my lease. I left them up overnight. I had orientation this morning and came back to find the curtains removed and nowhere in the apartment. I discovered this before entering the building, as 2 guys were outside one of my windows and looking in my apartment. They left when I entered the building. I messaged the landlord saying he didn't have the right to enter the apartment and asked for the curtains back. He again said to check my lease and then commented that I needed to finish unpacking as it looked messy in my apartment. I had to head to a work event so I couldn't follow through more, but I moved my electronics to one corner and used a bookshelf to block one of the windows so they weren't visible. While at the event, I got a text from the landlord with a picture of the blocked window, captioned, "What's this? What can I do to prevent my landlord from entering the apartment unannounced and to compel him to allow some form of curtain? Alternatively, how do I break my lease 3 days into it? This is too crazy for week 1. Update. Privacy-hating landlord. It looks like I'm staying, but I took control of the situation. Not long after posting, it became apparent at work that the length of time I would be needed on this project is significantly lower than outside estimates originally said. Finding new arrangements seemed impossible. I mentioned what was going on at dinner, and included at the table was the company's lawyer, who I know, who offered to review the lease on an unofficial basis. Wednesday morning, I called the police about the stolen curtains because I wanted a paper trail. They gave me a police report, but were uninterested in speaking to my landlord. I reported the theft to my insurance, gave them the info on who stole them, text from the landlord, and they said they would be contacting someone in the city. It's only $200, but that's the point of the thing. I next bought room dividers, which in no way, shape, or form can be considered curtains, blinds, etc., but block the windows while still letting in light. They were only $40 each. At the same time, I searched the whole apartment, vents, lights, etc., and can't find any cameras as someone suggested. By that time, my friend who is a lawyer called me. She did a little review of the lease and the local laws. She said Baltimore has really shaky laws on when a landlord can come in, but pointed out that in my lease there is a clause that says the landlord will notify 48 hours prior to entrance, and will call prior to entering in case of emergency. She drafted me a letter to send to my landlord. Her name won't appear anywhere, but said it can be on my company's letterhead. The letter details some of my rights as a tenant, quotes the lease and reminds him he is bound by these rules as well. I signed and sent it immediately. I had mentioned wanting a security camera, and my company is arranging to have a camera sent that will automatically upload video off-site, work for an hour battery life if the electricity is out, and operate on cellular, so it doesn't need Wi-Fi. It will be here tomorrow. I also made the decision to send my PS4 and my cameras back to my home. My personal and business laptops I will just keep with me while I am out of the apartment. This leaves the only real valuables as my TV and the security camera itself. Everything else is books, clothes, and kitchen things. I ordered a sign outside that says the property is monitored by security cameras, and got a jamb for the door that holds it closed while I'm inside. I'm prepared for the landlord to make my life hell, but if he breaks the lease, my plan is to ask the company to move me into an extended stay hotel for the duration of my trip. It will be more expensive for them, but that's company policy for trips less than 4 months. At the moment, I feel as safe as I can in this situation. Updates. Landlord texted me, "Sweetie, I didn't think you'd be like this." Responded, "I'm not you, sweetie. I'm your tenant. My name is Yee. Please use it." I discovered my wife's affair during her writing workshop, hired a P1, gathered evidence, and vanished without a trace before she returned home. Though my friends call me AB, never Andy, I go by Andrew Baker. Every now and then there's a nasty drunk or uneducated man trying to act too familiar and calls me Andy. "So Andy, what's your job?" they probe. I reply, "I made this neat little tool for cops to check drunk individuals from 40 feet away. They have even begun to link them to radars throughout town. That typically shuts them down. That gadget isn't real, though, should you still not know it yet. I obviously have not much tolerance for stupidity. Lie to me, and things go bad. I'm a straightforward guy, not complicated at all. I am content in my career and lead a simple life. I am an engineer employed by a large national corporation with offices scattered over the nation. I have pals, and although I'm not a heavy drinker, I do have a sporadic beer. Though that's my struggle, honestly I tend more toward nachos. I try to keep myself in reasonable form for my age since, if I let it spiral out of hand, I will gain weight. Every chance I had, I used to go sailing. Now, having a wife and 2 small girls takes up a lot of time. I sold the yacht at last. That was only one of the concessions I have voluntarily given over the years in order to spend quality time with the individuals truly important to me. For 25 years, Karen and I have been contentedly married. Her level of education is high school teacher. Right now our 2 girls are at college. While her younger sister Denise is in Boston University, Claire is a student at Brown University in Rhode Island. I most certainly couldn't afford those pricey universities, but fortunately the girls are committed students with outstanding scholarships. Our house is in North Carolina, more precisely the Research Triangle. It revolves on some outstanding Raleigh institutions and is flanked by first-rate high-tech businesses. One may live and work here quite nicely. Though it would just make me hungry, I could tell you about Carolina BBQ. When the daughters chose institutions up north, I was a little let down, but I know they had to venture beyond their comfort zone, and that is eventually a good thing. Our daughters are wonderful, smart, humorous, lovely young women with strong moral principles. Though I am daily concerned about their safety, I have faith in their judgment. Seeing children mature and start their path towards independence meant that my wife and I could at last have some alone time once more. For some time, I had been excited about this stage. I pictured going home every evening to a loving wife who would concentrate on me, and vice versa, with both girls away at college. I saw us picking back up our relationship and having happy days. It resembled almost exactly being newlyweds once more. We could have dinners out, go to movies and plays, and at last rediscover each other the way I had always wanted. But reality turned out very differently than I had imagined. To be honest, thinking back on that first year of an empty nest, I saw Karen changing. Her hobbies seemed to be changing. Although the change was slow, in time it became increasingly clear. At first I saw these as her means of blossoming now our girls were no longer living with us. But finally I came to see that her priorities and values were undergoing a major change. English teacher Karen specializes in creative writing. She is fairly speaking a frustrated writer as well. She never really had the opportunity to write as she desired being a teacher and young mother. Karen writes during the summer and whenever she could spare an hour or 2, but so far not much has come out of it. She liked to compile rejection letters after sending her essays and short tales to literary publications. Her ideal magnificent masterwork was never realized. Though as a writer she has never ventured beyond predictable and perhaps too theatrical tales, I will admit I enjoy reading her. She has a romanticized view of what a writer should be, and covertly I believe she is more drawn to the concept than the actual work. Still, I'm happy too if she is happy. Karen has belonged to several writing clubs most of our marriage. Aiming to help each other's writing, these are meetings of people who come together to offer comments, ideas, and conversations about their work. While some of these organizations seem to be more like clubs of mutual adoration, others seem really useful to me. Her last group, the one she belonged to when everything broke down, contained components of both. They alternated visiting each other's houses, and during their encounters here, I would try to give them privacy. I tried once but stopped since Karen and a few others objected. There are about 10 people in Karen's present writing group, men as well as women. While some of them I could live without, others I enjoy. When you meet them, half of them really are relatively average and the other half really stand out. For example, the Lady Reggie is rather passionate in creating biographies and history. She still manages to captivate readers despite doing scholarly-oriented book writing and serious research. I have loved reading all of her works. Betty likes to write fantasy. She tends more toward the talking unicorn type than I would have her as the next J.K. Rowling. She's nice, and her writing seems to be mostly for her own enjoyment. Who can dispute that? Bill takes on the group's know-it-all function. Apart from that, he appears all good. A bit of that goes a long way. Then Frank comes in. The first time I saw him, I felt scared. Ever since, those alarms have kept ringing in my head. It was very evident when I met Frank that I was being introduced to him rather than the other way round. Examining me, he asked, "So Andy, what's your profession?" I looked at my wife. She shook her head and somewhat frowned. I said simply, "I'm an engineer." Frank gave no smile, more of a smirk in reply. Though not precisely out of earshot, I said I had given up trying to interact with their group and preferred to keep rather hidden and quiet. Until they forget, I usually find myself in the next room silently working or on the rear porch with a window open so I could hear their talk. Frank seems to share private jokes and a connection that makes me uneasy when he talks to Karen. Early on I found. He occasionally makes her ego stronger and other times seems as though he understands her inner thoughts in a way I value less. He mentions past talks that seem to be only between them, and I get the sense that the rest of the group doesn't recall those times. Although it's only a feeling, I have informed her I find it unpleasant. She dismisses my worries, and I know not to press the topic. She knows my feelings, the rest is up to her. During its sessions, the group performs a set ritual. Their work session ends with some wine and relaxation. It was during this period that I came to see some of them were just acting. It took place in the midst of the spring semester, close to early March, when the subject turned to the way actual writers lived. Oh, all the eminent writers were alcoholics. That's right, they drank in the afternoons and evenings and penned in the mornings. It awakens the mind to fresh concepts and helps one to relax. Their creative ideas then start to flow in the mornings and they start writing. Actually, the really great writers all went through love relationships. That's the real inspiration for them. Frank was saying just that. Thanks for providing, Frank. I'm beginning to get your perspective. Karen's words then really hit me like a gut punch. Indeed, exactly. The real inspiration is found in the intensity and the thrill of the unknown, that is, in keeping it all secret from everyone else. I persuaded myself it was only a joke as some of them laughed and others didn't. Still, I listened in on their chat all through the evening. Maybe we should all have a wild night of passion sometime and then each write the next great American novel. Bill had that. I wasn't sure if he meant it humoristically or not. Not great writing comes from character defects. Features like humanity, empathy, and facing the riddles of the unknown really help to create great stories. I said before that Betty appealed to me. Memorable tales are about conquering obstacles, aiming for excellence in spite of all the odds, and leaving the planet in a better condition than it was in before. Well, perhaps if you conjure the right enchantment, we can avoid all the hassle. Again, that was that jackass Frank. To their shame, some in the group seemed to find that humorous. I had a hunch Reggie didn't either, and I'm not quite sure Betty did. They were debating writer drinking practices and affairs, and I kept listening without offering anything. Then I overheard a fascinating bit of their chat. Is anyone else planning to apply for the Illinois Writer Workshop this summer? Frank was now speaking once more. Oh, I turned in my application already. Keeping my fingers crossed will help them to accept me. 6 weeks of just writing and talking with other authors could truly change things for me. This was Karen. I had never heard of her before. Frank caught it up straight immediately. I am sure they will welcome you. Your work has improved really dramatically this past year. I think you will get admitted. I've also applied. I'm not as sure I'll be in though. My own feeling of internal radar for stupidity was off target. Frank, really, when did you start to get so modest? Though at this point I still loved and trusted my wife, I didn't like what I was hearing. Trust is basic when you have been married for the length of time we have. You ask not, is she up to no good? Not even cross your head the idea. Your mate is your other half. Marriage is a partnership. She has proved her dedication year after year. All you really want is for her to discover the success and happiness she so deserves, or at least that is what you think. Later on though, everything falls apart when you find your confidence has been betrayed. Update 1. I let myself ignore the overheard exchange from that evening over time. As I said, I trusted my wife entirely. Some younger males might not understand it, but trust becomes a way of life rather than only a decision after being married for more than 20 years. Late April found me finishing some outside gardening when I decided to call it a day and head indoors. Reaching for the kitchen door, I discovered my wife on the phone exclaiming, "I can't wait. 6 whole weeks without any responsibilities, no commitments, and no one waiting for me to get back." At the last bit, I started to perk. I stopped in front of her and listened. Absolutely. Those 6 weeks will be the most self-indulgent of my life. I owe it to myself. You too owe it to yourself. Not one of these appealed to me. I walked through the kitchen opening the door. Karen appeared shocked. "Well, I have to sprint. AB is here and I have to start cooking dinner." She grabbed fast. I said, "Who was that on the phone?" "Oh, just Regina. We were discussing the shortly closing of schools." "Like heck it was," I said. I wanted to probe her about some of her remarks, particularly one about no one waiting for me to come home, but I realized that tonight the truth might be in scarce supply. Though I tried to hide it for the moment, my attitude worsened. Dinner later that evening, the other shoe dropped. "AB, the amazing news I got today will not surprise you. Recall that Illinois writer workshop for which you applied?" "Come on, you hardly pay attention to me." To be honest, I had heard about the workshop before, but that was only because I had overheard her talking about it over a month ago. "I don't remember you stressing it." "Sure, I did. I applied for a 6-week workshop for authors. At the University of Illinois, it falls mid-June through late July. Their lecturers give lectures. They also bring in eminent authors for seminars and debate forums. We then get rather busy writing. I was accepted, and this is an amazing chance." "That sounds excellent, honey. We could certainly handle it financially. Perhaps I might join you and take a little time off from work. I would really enjoy listening to those authors speak." Her response appeared odd. "Well, we can think about it. I won't have much free time to spend with you over the very demanding 6 weeks." My gut was tingling once more. "Well, you know I'm not exacting. I could be the group's coffee guy." She gave a really tense smile. "That may be lovely, darling. Let us monitor things." Such deflections have come from both sides. I knew what they meant. She was making sure I wouldn't wind up traveling to Illinois with her. "I get the sense you would rather I didn't go with you." "Oh no, it is not like that. I merely worry you might find it boring. You're into computers and circuits, and this is basically writers discussing major concepts." I kept that to myself. Back off, I thought. When I was being excluded, I knew. I said, ending the discussion, "I'm sure you'll excel." After Karen retired to bed later that evening, I checked our phone records online. AITA provides that capability. All incoming and outgoing calls as well as text messaging are logged. When I looked over the phone log, the call I had cut off wasn't with Reggie. Or if it was, Frank's phone started it. When you find your wife lying and learning she has plans to exclude you, it's amazing how quickly trust can fall apart after a quarter-century of marriage. Weeks went by, and she appeared fixated on the workshop's talks. She rejected the idea every time I tried several times to talk about maybe visiting at some time or going with her. She next moved from rationalizing to manipulating. "AB, I have some interesting news. Late June saw me get you and Jake 2 passes to a fishing camp in northern Canada. You can take Jake, and both of you will love fishing for those large brown fish you constantly mention. Although it was very costly, I wanted to show thanks for your understanding of the writer's workshop. And I felt a little bad since you wouldn't be having fun, hence I want you to go and have a fantastic time. We may then discuss our experiences when I get back." Something didn't seem right. "Thanks, sweetheart. That shows consideration of you. To be honest, I would enjoy your company more. AB, we have seen this. Simply said, it makes no sense. I will be working all through. I would feel guilty ignoring you in such a manner." I looked at her face and eyes momentarily, trying to make sense of it. Was it contempt? "Thanks, honey. Canada seems entertaining." My voice was devoid of energy. I was mentally organizing my choices. A surprise trip to Illinois took the front stage. "Well, you could at least say it while grinning. Those tickets cost a lot of money, so you should be glad." "Sure, sounds fantastic." To tinker for the evening, I descended to the basement. Our ancient house had one of those floor grates in the corridor. Originally, the first floor was heated by it, allowing warm air to pass from the furnace room. I first made a point not to step on it inadvertently, but with time I grew used to it and forgot about its existence. There is also the phone in the hall. I was quietly working in the basement, thinking about what to do when I heard Karen on a call. "Yes, I handed him the passes. He remains unsure. I keep telling him he won't love it. I'm not sure exactly. No, I cannot merely advise him against showing up. I want it too, but I also want to stay married later on. I simply need him to allow me some time to enjoy myself over a few weeks. I have earned it. I am due. I do want those weeks with you as well. All fine, let us wait a while. I believe he will show up. All right, darling, I miss you too. For me tonight, write something outstanding." She cut off the call with that. I got a lump in my throat. I'm not naive. I hear cheating and know it's not good. Karen either was thinking about or in an affair. Anything less, and she would still have a lot of work to do explaining. It took me 20 minutes to collect my ideas, but I decided that for now I had to start acting like the kind of liar I've always hated. At least for the moment, I had to hide my goals until I had a strategy. In a very loving voice, I said, "Karen, I'm heading over to see Jake and give him the good news," as I phoned upstairs. "Oh, that's fantastic, darling. Enjoy," she said. And I was out the basement door exactly like that. I required distance. Seeing Jake was only a pretext. Thinking about it, I knew I needed someone to confide in. And Jake had been my closest buddy from early life. "You're kidding me," Jake responded, not dodging around the issue. "No way, I won't buy it. She would never turn on you, AB." "Well, she's certainly working hard to keep me away from that workshop, and she's calling someone baby, and it's definitely not me." We merely sat there, silent. Most men want from a friend simply sitting with them and sharing the suffering. "You have to talk to her about this, AB. Assuming the worst without knowledge of the truth will not help you through the next few months." "And what is she likely to say?" "When I review the phone records tonight, how much would you want to wager that Frank was not the one she spoke with? Frank she called baby, and Frank she's plotting with wasn't Frank." "I am not laying that bet." "What then is your intended course of action?" "I'm going to grab a seat and have a frank conversation. After 25 years of marriage, that's what you do. I'll tell her I love her, let her know I'm offended she doesn't want me to travel with her, and I'll ask her straightforwardly what she's up to, that she doesn't want me there." "Do you suppose she would tell you the truth?" "No, but I'll tell her the truth. Even if some of it isn't what she wants to hear. She'll know how much I love her. She will understand that cheating on me will destroy our relationship. She will then most likely try to persuade me that I should simply go fishing since I am seeing things." I stopped just for a moment. "By the way, one ticket is for you. I have 2 for a fishing camp in northern Canada in late June." "Nice," Jake said, catching himself. "I mean, friend, here I am to help you." I laughed a little bit. I have always known exactly where his allegiance resides. Before I left for home, we spoke, exchanged ideas, and drank a few beers for 3 hours. I opened up about practically everything. After dinner, asking Karen to come sit with me in the living room, I pushed back a few things. "Sweetheart, I have some quite major worries. About the writer's workshop, I don't think you have been quite open with me. You mentioned it to me only once you had already scheduled a trip, even though I overheard you talking about it with your writer group back in March. I have to admit, I didn't find it funny when you mentioned how common affairs are among brilliant authors. Frank and you have been talking about your vacation, but when I ask, you lie and say it's someone else. You know how I feel about that guy. Then, when you told me you were accepted, you seemed deliberately aloof and discouraged me from participating. Though I am not here, I wanted to partake in this fascinating trip with you. Rather than thinking about it, you set plans for me to be somewhere else without even talking to me. Just committing on my behalf. You seem to be attempting to make sure I won't be around when you're in Illinois. You haven't been quite honest with me, hence I'm beginning to wonder if you have been entirely loyal. AB, I would never be dishonest with you and I have never treated you that way. What has drawn you in? Being your husband, all I want is for you to have fun. That you could believe something like that about me truly hurts. I have no control over my emotions or what sets things off. You know, I love you. Since our first meeting, I have loved you. Nevertheless, I cannot just ignore the concept of treachery. Are you hoping for that, Karen? Is this writer's workshop your haven from our marriage?" Update 2. Our dialogue came to an end with that. Not more loving or sympathetic conversation. She started screaming and spent the remainder of the evening either shouting or silently. And for the next week, it was silent. She was trying to get me to turn back down by applying the silence treatment, thereby punishing me. It did not work though. Actually, it reinforced my beliefs solely. But I knew I wasn't moving in this direction, and finally I let her think she had achieved success. Not much I could do to stop her from cheating if she intended to do so. The phone call I listened in on even hinted she might have done it already. I finally thanked her for the vacation to Canada, but my attitude stayed dark until the trip was finished. She changed her attitude fast and behaved like a devoted wife to support the behavior she wanted from me once she had what she wanted. She seemed to flick a switch, which just made me more suspicious. When I am the recipient of manipulation, I know it is happening. I asked a colleague who he consulted when he suspected his wife of cheating. The Illinois Writers' Workshop was just 500 meters away and I knew none there. I took his advice, and the person he suggested was Illinois-based. I contacted them asking for help. The fact that the session occurred on a state university campus made its location favorable. Although they couldn't take part in the program, the PI's agents could roam the campus and monitor the rooms as needed. The participants would eat in the university cafeterias, go to nearby clubs, and share a big dorm with other students. This gave room for covert monitoring. With modern tools, some of these kids would actually be working for me. Our daughters decided to stay in their colleges for the summer to work in research labs under their professors as the school year was drawing to a conclusion. We were still empty nesters then. I deliberately tried to invite her to dinners made at home and show her around. She appeared to be enjoying everything, hence I began to think I was improving. But every time I told her I loved her, I felt her dismissive "I know" attitude. The fragments of the puzzle came together gradually. She had merely taken me for granted, not stopped loving me. I knew her safety net was consistent and familiar. She knew she could go away, find thrills, break off our marriage, and I would be waiting when she got back. This insight brought my ideas into line. I knew I couldn't leave things unanswered the day she left. Her shuttle for the airport came as we stood close to the door. I begged and said, "Please don't do anything that could ruin us," tightly gripping her. She flashed me an annoyed glance in answer and retorted, "I'm tired of you not trusting me. We will have a major discussion about this when I get back." She snatched her luggage, kissed me quickly on the cheek, and hurried for the shuttle. She left without ever looking back at me. I sensed then that my marriage was about to end. After 25 years and our 2 grown kids, it seemed our relationship was going away with little notice. The private investigator did his work really well. He said they were in an unfamiliar area, so they didn't bother covering their acts. Karen has to have taken off her wedding bands on the plane since they vanished off her finger when she arrived at the studio. She claimed freely to be newly divorced, and Frank and my wife started to be inseparable right away. They were together all the time, kissing, holding hands, and behaving as passionate high school students would have. My PI cleverly set a tiny video camera in their dorm hallway. Karen and Frank only used one of their designated rooms, although each had one. Sometimes her chamber, sometimes his, but always they stayed late together. Although I knew what was happening in those shared dorm rooms, my PI and his crew went to considerable measures to verify my suspicions. Frank and my wife left early one evening before it was dark. 2 agents, looking like normal college students, sat against the corridor wall and surreptitiously slipped a tiny fisheye camera under the door. Frank was seen in action for 20 minutes using this gadget. The video quality was shockingly clear, and he clearly hadn't used protection when he finished. That for me was the last straw. I was clearly done with this marriage. Anything else the team found served only as more proof to support my position. Regular updates from my private investigator kept me informed, but after that first week her future was obvious and my decision was taken. Beginning the early days of her workshop, I spent time implementing my plan. I wanted to be virtually invisible, almost ghostly. I would have vanished and there would be no turning back. No falsehoods, no ultimatums, no protracted negotiations, explanations, justifications, or attempts at reconciliation when she got back. The sole outcome would be divorce. My marriage was about to fall apart. Though it does not fade fast, what is love without trust? An unfaithful wife cannot define a future. Some could contend that my answer was weak. They could advise she deserves horrible humiliation, physical punishment, and total poverty. Ultimately, though, the law would forbid me from pursuing any of that, and I had no intention of ruining the rest of my life by seeking such cruel revenge on my adulterous wife and her lover. Eliminating the one thing she always depended on, the consistent presence that comforted, encouraged, uplifted, and inspired her, would be my payback. I was walking away from myself. Frank lacked suitability for a catch. Long term, he was unable to meet her needs. Where would a 50-year-old divorced mother find emotional stability and love? I not give a damn. She no longer would be of interest to me. My private investigator would bring me more images, recordings, and proof of treachery by the person who promised me allegiance above all else every few days. The pictures and videos in the reports were very upsetting to view. The reports themselves were challenging to read. Especially when they covered me, the audio recordings were the toughest to handle. He is always emailing me about the fish he is catching and how incredible it is up there. Nearly every day he thanks me. She laughs. Frank joined in the laughing. He's clueless. You escape from his irritation by keeping him in the dark and treating him like a mushroom. He could as well have fun right now. I'll face that geek about his charges when I get back. How dare he continually charge me of cheating? But you are momentarily straying from our marriage, correct, beautiful? Alternatively, is another woman sleeping next night on my bed? She laughed at that, really. Well, I won't put up with that even if he may be onto something. Damn it, I'm a writer. His circuits and computer lingo are holding me back with their millimeters and micro thingamajigs. About huge ideas, what does he know? Update 3. As long as my existence stayed linked to hers, none of the several ways I considered for retribution would really satisfy me. One decision remained, and I started the process of separating from her. I explained everything honestly to my supervisor. Having gone through something like this personally not so long ago, he could appreciate it. He set up a transfer for me to show up at Portland, Maine, our corporate office. I thought the concept was interesting. I knew the folks there were professional, competent, and I liked their company. I found attractions in the town and the state as well. To get half of the furniture and all of my personal stuff up north, I booked movers. I checked that my automobile was in good condition for the trip, then spoke with a lawyer to start the divorce process. Regarding money problems, Karen had a retirement account and her own insurance. I made my daughters the beneficiaries and deleted her name from every one of my possessions. For no alimony, I signed a quitclaim deed turning the house over to her. She would keep her automobile but have to deal with her own insurance. Keeping my plans understated, I intended to handle credit cards and bank accounts closer to the finish. From that point ahead, I concentrated on strengthening my will. I meant to call her to show my love and to find out how the workshop was going. Hearing her lies would help me to get more convinced that my behavior was justified. She didn't let down anyone. She reacted with fervor, said her love, and went out to dinner in less than 2 minutes. Later on, my private investigator told me Frank was right next to her, mocking gestures and knowing glances, which just confirmed my choice. She clearly saw the matter as a joke, which validated my direction in life. Later on, I decided to text her instead of calling since I wasn't sure I could control my feelings over the phone. Though in reality I sent Jake and his wife on such vacations, I would tell her about great fishing excursions. They enjoyed themselves thoroughly. Regarding his marriage, Jake made a smart decision. They promised to see me and I did pay them a farewell visit before I left. Her 6-week workshop was ending, and I finished my last assignments. I put a for sale sign from a buddy who works as a real estate agent in the front yard. She was ignorant of that aspect, but I couldn't really sell the house without her permission, especially since I had already transferred ownership to her. Her first sight upon returning home would be the sign. To help the house seem less like a house, I changed the locks. I created a copy of the PI's report and chose specific pictures from her trip, including graphic stills from the video shot taken under Frank's door. To let her know she had been found out, I left all of this on the dining room table. The movers had already relocated most of my stuff. They would keep it until I needed it. I packed just 2 pieces of luggage, a briefcase, a laptop, and a guitar. I absolutely had to have my guitar. Something so valuable could not be trusted to anybody else. Frank could be engaged with my wife, but I loved my guitar very much. Knowing she wouldn't be back until late that evening, my first thought was to leave the next morning. I would be long gone when she showed up. But the evening before, I changed my mind. She could only wait and worry. I wanted her to feel the suffering right away. Along with the words "divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you," I emailed her 3 well-selected pictures of her with Frank. I chose one picture when they were almost close on the dance floor, obviously revealing she wasn't sporting her engagement and wedding rings. The second picture caught them holding hands as they entered his dorm room. The third was a crisp, face-clear screenshot from the dorm room footage. She would see these pictures, and I hoped it would ruin her last beautiful night with Frank as they furiously looked for cameras that had already been taken down. Then I turned off my phone. Leaving the house our family had lived in for many years was a mix of grief, uncertainty, and newly acquired independence. All at once it seemed like the most difficult, uncertain, and freeing event of my life. My wife basically disappeared from my life. Though I hadn't personally caused it, it seemed as though she had died, not knowing the when or the why. The woman looking like my wife was someone I knew nothing about and I wanted no contact with. I was starting over and had no idea where I might be headed. Among the great loss, there was an unusual sense of emancipation. If only momentarily, the weight of dishonesty, treachery, and belittlement was offloaded from my shoulders. The sole expense was half of my life now unreachable. Late, but my mind was racing, so I drove almost 100 miles down the peaceful highway lost in contemplation till I came to a hotel for the evening. I was hoping for a real local breakfast restaurant, not for a chain motel. I searched for something real. I eventually found it and enjoyed what might be my final dish of grits for some time. My perspective changed and I started to rethink my path to Maine as I ate those grits. This signaled the beginning of my new life, and I had a long journey ahead. I had a 2-week window before employment began, so even if I could speed up my trip to Maine, fleeing my troubles, why accelerate? I needed time to gather my ideas, process her treachery, and let the past go. I decided to go gradually, enjoying the landscape on my northward drive and interacting with every state and its people as I passed through. My old life would give way to my new one this week. To be ready for a fresh start and clear myself of the ugly and blunders of my past, I meant to nurture my senses, including my taste buds. Wandering about Williamsburg among the summer throngs, the rest of the day was lost. I investigated the abilities of talented craftsmen and artists. I found somewhere to stay even though I had no reservation. My thoughts returned to my failing marriage only after a small dinner and settling in for the evening. She was probably going home about that time. Seeing the for sale sign on the front yard and knowing her keys wouldn't open the door, I wondered how she would respond. I traveled north along the winding roads toward Annapolis, Maryland's capital, the following day. Along Virginia's ancestral rivers, the York, Rappahannock, and Potomac, which go into the Chesapeake Bay, I passed through little villages and old estates. Ahead, there was one road stretch headed toward my destiny. I would follow that meandering road, which led me from betrayal to a new chapter in my life. Update 4. At last turned on my cell phone, I sat in my hotel room in downtown Annapolis. It was, predictably, full with many missed calls, emails, and text messages. A few came from friends, most of them came from Karen. Despite it being difficult, I read and listened to every one of them. That was a step that was absolutely vital. Indeed, Karen was trying to persuade me that things were not as they seemed at first. She sent those texts from Illinois before going back home, then saw the remainder of the pictures and perused the PI's report. My pals were letting me know, meanwhile, that Karen was trying to find me by contacting everyone. She was looking in all the wrong places, little knowing it. Although Jake and his wife knew, I decided to deliberately keep the rest in the dark. Once I had been established, I would let them know. I knew immediately that I could not spend eternity ghostly. 2 calls from my girls started to worry me. Karen had gotten in touch with them trying to track me. As I wanted to do it in person, I had deliberately not notified them about my choice to leave their mother. I gently explained the matter to my daughters, though, since I cannot let them worry. Their mother could do such a thing, which infuriated them and made it difficult for them to believe. For this reason, I emailed them the identical images I had shown Karen the evening I left home together with the PI's report. They promised then not to tell their mother about my activities. One more missed call. My attorney told me Karen had been formally served with divorce papers. She knew now that I intended business. Frank's wife had also got a whole set of pictures, films, and audio recordings from his 6-week program. For Frank, that was a karma dosage. Driving over northern Maryland on the 3rd day of my trip, I eventually arrived at New Jersey. Well, not exactly with much enthusiasm. I entered New Jersey but stopped just before I arrived in Connecticut. Once in Connecticut, I spent several hours investigating some coastal historic towns. Though I had no particular objective, the architecture was so different from what I was accustomed to in North Carolina that I felt a strong sensation of being in a new place, both physically and emotionally. And avoided telling the authorities, but I spent an hour in Groton looking for as many submarines as I could. Those blackfish are quite stealthful. Looking along the coast, I was reminded that those nuclear submarines cut a hole in the hull to refuel the reactor and subsequently weld the hull back together. Was that another way to describe my circumstances? Could the first step in rejuvenating my life be Karen's treachery, which ripped a hole in my heart? Once I started down a new path, could I heal myself? The next day when I got up, I knew it would be the toughest day thus far. Following a filling breakfast of eggs, bacon, bread, and a robust cup of black coffee, I prepared myself for a challenging chat with my eldest daughter, Claire, at Brown. The drive there took little time, and I was at her dorm about late morning. We agreed to postpone our talk a little so she could act happy for an hour or two. She showed me around the university, then brought me to the cafeteria, where she met her friends. These were exactly the kind of young men and women I had hoped she would surround herself with, friendly, attentive, and apparently supportive. I pulled Claire's roommate aside on our way out and told her Claire had a difficult day. She was supposed to watch my daughter. "Oh sure, Mr. Baker," she said. "She shared it with us last night. Here among us are all her supporters." Yes, my daughter had made sensible friend choices. Claire and I stayed in her dorm room talking for hours. I showed her pictures and played audio recordings I never would have imagined to expose to one of my kids. Her feelings swung from grief to rage. Mom would do that is beyond unbelievable. Is she the same person who raised us at all? She has become what kind of nasty person? Though I could relate to her, at that moment I had to step in. Claire is your mother whatever she does. And keep in mind that I, not you, she has betrayed. Sorry, Dad, but she broke my soul family. I am definitely affected by this. I couldn't contradict that. We kept talking all afternoon, and I showed her my ideas. I urged her to get her friends together, and we had dinner at the greatest restaurant in town, or at least the one within my means. Everyone seems to have delighted in a departure from the standard dining hall cuisine. I related tales of my own college eating experiences, and I believe it helped them to see their own circumstances in a fresh light. That night I remained at a nearby hotel. The next morning I had breakfast with Claire, hugged her tearfully, and then traveled north to repeat the procedure. Claire has to have told Denise, as her response was far more under control than that of her older sister. Though less astonished, there remained dissatisfaction and resentment. She asked to view the supporting materials. I showed her. Her mother called coincidentally as we were chatting, and I sent her the universal sign for, "No, I'm not here." I shook my head, waved wildly, and copied a throat-cutting action. She knew Denise was always the family's more level-headed member. She then accomplished something I had never seen before. She said, "Dad phoned yesterday night, did he not? Is it true you have evolved into a lady who lies about cheating on her husband and engages in multiple partner involvement?" I stunned myself. Though at the same time I couldn't dispute the truth in her remarks, I wanted to chastise her for talking to her mother like that. "You heard, Mom. You stayed 6 weeks helping someone else while Dad was alone at home. Mom, was it well worth it? Was it worth going without your spouse?" Really, my daughter uses words rather brilliantly. Note to self, stay off her negative side. Not much more ground to cover. Denise told me that although her mother was primarily in tears and trying to provide apologies, my daughter was not buying any of it. Not far from the university, I later brought Denise and her companions to a Thai restaurant named the Elephant Walk. Like her sister, Denise had selected her friends deliberately, and dinner was a nice gathering. One of her friends stated, "Mr. Baker, Denise told us about what you're going through on our way back to campus. Last night, she was rather agitated. We helped her. Perhaps you could come back here and we will treat you to the cafeteria." That made the group giggle. I mean, really, maybe we can find a better place than that. This set off more chuckles, and we laughed all the way back to her dorm. After finding a place to rest for the evening, I had breakfast with my daughter in the morning, and on the 7th day of my trip I kept on going northward. I left Boston and arrived barely 2 hours south of Portland. My priorities now were my girls rather than my soon-to-be ex-wife. I couldn't be prouder of them. They were becoming strong, moral young women. I came to see they would negotiate the approaching divorce more skillfully than I had imagined. Leaving these two incredible jewels behind with no idea of when I will see them again presented a struggle on this day. As it happens, my concerns were unfounded. Not ready to face the realities of beginning my new life just yet, so when I arrived at Portsmouth, New Hampshire, I turned west and headed for the Presidential Range in the White Mountains. I arrived in the White Mountains and ascended Mount Washington via the Cog Railway. Feeling the chilly Arctic winds that seemed out of place in the early days of August, I finally sensed a rebirth inside myself as I stood there gazing across the breadth to the lesser peaks of the White Mountains and surveyed the lush pine trees below. Though alone, at least I was tall. I had changed, shedding the obligations and regrets of my previous existence. I was then ready to welcome the fresh chapter and all its possibilities. Standing on higher ground, I was ready to start a different trip. Everything I could have wanted was ahead. I placed a real maple syrup-topped pancake order the next morning. Right now I was in maple syrup country. Years to come would find me in the same surroundings. Restless and ready, I got back into my car and headed for Portland. Arriving in the middle of the afternoon, I chose to follow up with my new manager to let them know I'd arrived. About half of the office personnel knew me already, so I was greeted warmly. It was comforting. Those were the first happy, straightforward faces I had seen in a week. Henry, my new manager, got the staff assembled for introductions. I took a brief tour of the company, but not before everyone decided where we would all eat dinner. I thought it would be a downtown restaurant, but to my astonishment we found ourselves grilling steaks in Henry's place with all the accompaniments. Though I should have savored lobster in Maine, there was no hurry for it. This was more about getting back into society and savoring some really delicious steaks and quite exceptional local beer. They asked about my story. What was a guy from the South doing uprooting his life and moving to Maine at this point? I thereafter told my story. I left off the graphic elements but gave enough for them to grasp. I might get a bit short-tempered in the next few weeks, I said at closing. Though I have a lot to process, it is not my usual attitude. If I act out, perhaps you would call me out and advise me to chill off. Now and then I could use some mild pushback. Every man put his arm around my shoulder. Every woman present unexpectedly gave me a peck on the cheek. All they said, "AB," was, "We're here for you." All they needed to say. Later that evening, I turned on my cell phone once more after getting inside my hotel room. One of each of my daughters had sent encouraging notes. I had gotten perhaps 8 or 10 extra texts from the young men and women who loved the dinner and wanted me to know they would be there for my girls, so they must have shared my number with their friends. Those young people are really amazing. Many friends kept reaching out, so I decided to get in touch with all of them and explain the circumstances so they can stop worrying. I kept my whereabouts secret. That would come later. I just explained why I had left. Though at first they were reluctant to believe it, I sent them the same 3 pictures I had sent Karen and told them I had even more damning evidence should they require more proof. I considered it, but really I couldn't think of one way to keep her from making her own decisions. Let the truth out in due course. I had tried and it had not worked. Every one of them sent me loving notes and encouragement. I told them I would keep in touch. My ideas of becoming a ghost were clearly wishful thinking. Too many people cared about me, and that is undoubtedly a good thing. I listened to the missed calls while reading over Karen's last text messages. She came clean eventually and admitted, although her confession was laced with odd outbursts of wrath. She found me one way or another responsible for her behavior and for all that had happened. That is simply ludicrous. I texted her saying I would call her about noon the next day. It has to happen sooner or later. Let's say the talk was not at all fulfilling. She moved from denial to remorse to blame. She apologized. Over her, Frank had great influence. Her suffocating me was a result. I worked too much, hence I was at fault. She even dared to assert that between them, they were merely playing about. Nothing major happened. When she tried to persuade me she was merely looking for her creative inspiration, I almost started laughing. She even accused me of turning our girls against her, as if her own behavior hadn't achieved that without my help. When she finally stopped talking, I laid it out for her quite simply. She had plotted with Frank to turn on me, fought my attempts to mend our relationship, carried out the betrayal, and now she was dealing with fallout. The whys lost importance to me now. She was still begging her case and sobbing when I hung up. I was finished with her. Not turning back, I knew too much. Conveniently near the office, I found a basic but pleasant 2-bedroom apartment in an older building. Originally considering it as a temporary situation, I believed I could utilize the walking exercise but soon changed my viewpoint. Living simply in town, avoiding the added chores that come with owning a house, and having a little coastal cottage for weekends sounded like a wonderful idea. Then I considered why I should stop at a cottage. My seaside escape may be a yacht I purchase, kept parked in the harbor. Early October arrived by the time I worked through all of this. Though I had intended to live alone, it has not turned out that way. Actually, I spend more time with my daughters right now than I did in Raleigh. Every month they arrange a weekend trip, usually accompanied by friends. My apartment is alive during those 36 hours, and I generally treat them to dinner. Though I miss them right away, I do yearn for the silence once they are gone. A handful of my friends have visited, and the others intend to visit when the weather is better. Surprisingly, though I live alone, I am not lonely. Along with all my travels, I have acquired new pals at work. The sailing community is vibrant and welcoming. I have met interesting women. I will, however, keep polite and well-mannered until the divorce is official. Karen still gets in touch with me even if the divorce will be formal soon. She would rather minimize the circumstances and never really stones. She says simply, everyone does it, it has no significance at all. It does though. The intimacy has weight, hence the dishonesty and manipulation are much more important. Though people evolve and I no longer see the use in conveying this to her. To be honest, my life is not quite apart from hers. Complete dissociation is not likely given 2 daughters and numerous mutual connections. Still, I no longer live with the everyday suffering of rejection and betrayal 600 miles separating us. Up until I was no longer living in hers, she was the focal point of my life. I am now building my own future and walking my own road. A number of favorable results came from the circumstance. To start with, I actually adore living up here. Though it's a bit of a shock, I'm experiencing my first Maine winter. If others can do it, so can I. Early darkness in this area actually makes indoor events seem cozier and more brilliant. I'm excited about spring when I can work on splicing lines and applying varnish because I started looking for a boat and came upon a spot with moorings not too far from town. The people are real, the microbreweries are excellent, and the neighborhood restaurants are decent. There's a range of music, dances to learn, like contra dancing, and I'm still finding surprises. After all, I think life will go out for me. Is my heart at last healed? Not yet, but I have hope for the better life that is ahead since time has a way of curing hurts. Oh, and as a side note, Frank's wife appears to be as traditional as I am. She divorced him and kicked him out the house. Even worse is what is involved here. Frank and Karen are still unpublished. Wife had an affair with my stepfather to steal the $1 million mansion, but little did she know it was mine. Married 7 years to Kia, 38F, I am 38M. With our share of ups and downs, our relationship has been really normal. The downs largely resulted from my wife's belief I was overly close to my mother. She did call me a mama's boy. Since my mother passed away 2 years ago, I am not going to defend it now as she is no longer living. I'm happy I could love her the way she deserved. She had raised me alone and, even beyond her means, given me the finest of everything. Until she met Andrew 10 years ago, my mother was a single parent to me. Andrew married my mother in early 50s, having recently gone through divorce. I'm not sure what Andrew's mother saw that caused her to wed him after 2 decades of single life. Andrew vanished from me when Mom was still around. Twice a week I used to see her, but my interactions with Andrew limited themselves to polite salutations and a smile. Though I never showed Mom, I simply couldn't accept him as a father figure and don't know why. She finding a friend in her last days of life made me glad. Andrew vanished from my life and there was no doubt about his existence. Though he was still living at my mom's house, I never even visited him following her funeral. When I saw him seated with my wife, his arm encircling hers, I started to worry about him. That was not an elderly or friendly hug. Their body language bothered me, or more accurately, their chemistry. Our familial dynamics made it strange as well. Like I indicated, Chia was not near my stepdad, and I was never close to him either. For me then, seeing such ease between them was somewhat awkward. I was driving while they were seated in a roadside cafe. Early that day, I had left the office to meet an old buddy. Usually I avoid visiting the region where I saw them. It is far from both my house and even my office. I went to see a friend, but I was mostly preoccupied. My friend persisted in asking whether something was bothering me, but I simply said it was related to approaching work. How could I share with him what I observed on my way? When I got home, I addressed Tia straightforwardly, telling her I saw her with Andrew without thinking. She became pale and lost speech. "Yeah, I met him for lunch," she remarked afterwards. She claimed she bumped into him when I asked her why all of a sudden, and then he offered to have lunch with her. She sensed from my staring at her that I had seen something I shouldn't have. She responded, "Your stepdad was quite offended over losing your mother." I set out to comfort him. Lonesome and without someone to chat to, the poor elderly man held my hands, hence he could communicate his loss. You see, I left out telling her. I watched him clutching her hands. He was putting his arms around her, and the way they were speaking didn't seem like he was depressed or at a loss for my mother. Though they were not laughing, their body language was flirty. Though I said nothing, I bought her excuse. Before any more confrontation, I chose to look into the problem personally. Chia works weekends and is off during weekdays since she is a nail artist in a beauty salon. Not a matter of concern between us until lately. We used to argue over Kia not allowing time for our relationship when she used to be overly consumed with her profession. She insisted that following the death of her mother, I was acting needy. She added that I used to visit my mom 2 times a week earlier, hence Chia's absence didn't really disturb me. But she was mistaken. On weekends, I used to see my mother. Although Chia had work on her off days, I always made sure I got back home promptly to spend time with her. She used to fight about me being a mama's boy, but now she was claiming I was hungry. I became even more enraged seeing her with my stepdad while all this was happening. A few weeks later, Thanksgiving arrived. Yes, I am referring to last Thanksgiving that just passed, and she demanded that we extend an invitation to Andrew. Her straight recommendation caught me off guard. Andrew was living alone and had no one, she stated, hence as extended family, we should welcome him. She answered, yeah, because they had each other to celebrate with, and now that poor old man is alone. When I told her she never invited them when my mom was alive. In the end I gave in. Really, I wanted to observe their behavior toward me. Though I now knew the truth, I wouldn't say they behaved normally. Rather, they did nothing odd. I would not have noticed anything if I did not know the truth. For much of it I was quiet. I never liked him, thus my suspicions made me even more resentful of his presence. I felt he also realized I didn't enjoy it. It was a strange supper overall. Tia tried to break the quiet with some pointless subjects, only to elicit false grins from both of us eating silently. I decided to plot since it was getting hard for me to live with a heavy heart. Though it was locked, I considered looking at her phone but decided against it. I did not to alert her and ask her for the password. I then developed still another strategy. I informed Chia I would be working out of town for many days. I left early on the intended day and headed to my office as normal, but before that I had fitted a GPS device in Tia's car and was monitoring it from a distance. She drove Andrew to his house just before lunchtime. I wanted to catch her red-handed. but I worried I would appear like an idiot if I showed up and they were just sitting and talking. I approached my pal Keith for assistance. I urged him to see Andrew and shared my misgivings. It was a safe strategy. I advised him to document any unusual findings. The house lock was password encrypted, hence I was expecting Andrew hadn't updated the PIN. I advised Keith to tell Andrew the front door was open and he was simply checking on him as he was concerned Andrew could accuse him of sneaking in. There was a little tunnel instead of the main door leading straight into the living room. Nobody would find him unlocking the door suspicious. He agreed following a persuasive argument. He entered but searched the corridor for them nowhere. Then he peeped in the bedroom while running his phone camera on. He had kept the phone in his shirt pocket with the camera sticking out to avoid suspicion. The two were embracing each other without clothes, he noted. Before one of them knew what had happened, he swiftly started to cry, "Sorry," and left the house. Following him outdoors, Andrew asked what he was doing there. Keith said he was only checking on him, but it's good, he would come later. Before any conflict with Andrew or Kia, he sat inside his car and headed off. But my guy is really dumb. He had the front camera open the entire time, hence nothing was captured save Andrew and Shia screaming at Keith's unexpected presence. Still, I received the required confirming evidence. Before leaving the house that day, I had already packed 2 sets of clothes in my toiletries. Therefore I headed to Keith's place. He urged me to stay with him until all this was settled since his wife was out of town at her parents' place. She is aware Keith would have shown me the truth. She messaged me wondering when I would get home. I responded not. I did ghost her, yes. Thinking I'm out of town for work, she has been bombashing my phone with countless texts and calls. 4 days ago this took place. Since I never want to see her face ever again, I have virtually contacted a lawyer. I will get her kicked from my residence and serve her divorce paperwork. Update 1. The attorney sent the divorce paperwork 10 days later. CIA wanted a talk and was simply not ready to sign them. If at all possible, my attorney advised we pursue an out-of-court settlement since it would drastically cut time and expenses. See, I work a consistent regular job as a salesperson. I only have so much leave to go to court hearings and a limited budget for lawyers. I agreed to meet in the presence of the lawyer. Kia persisted in a private talk with me though, even as I headed for the appointment. I objected, but thus long as I didn't say or promise anything she demanded, my attorney urged me to go for it. He set rigorous rules: no hugging, no touching, and no confessing. Her presence made me sick. I shoved her away as she tried to hug me. She claimed everything was a misinterpretation. Reading so many cheating stories on Reddit helped me to know exactly what all cheaters say. I answered, "Yeah, certainly. You were really attempting to assist an elderly poor man from his loneliness, right?" She said it was merely snuggling and nothing else, but she acknowledged whatever Keith saw was accurate, and she wasn't trying to dispute anything. Of course, hugging naked is quite natural. But what she said next really made sense. She claimed she acted to protect our future. Really? How exactly? She said, "Your mother bequeathed all her riches to Andrew. Should he wed someone else, that woman would be entitled to it. The property belonging to your family would go to someone else. You slept with my stepdad," I continued. "For this reason. You may become my stepmother and inherit the fortune of my mother. Does this family dynamic show any complexity?" Herbs made me lightheaded, hence I hurried out of the conference hall. My attorney asked for specifics of the conversation when I returned. I gave him all I could. Though he cracked up momentarily, he was actually curious about the inheritance my mother left. Mom had left behind a house her uncle had left behind. Way beyond my means, it was a large mansion. Fascinatingly, Shia always kept her eye on that mansion. She even insisted on us moving into the mansion following our marriage. Though Chia wanted her mother to move out to my apartment while we were occupying her mansion, I was glad she wanted to live with her. I denied it. She lived here. Why should she leave? "You're the only son of your mother, thus that house would come to you," Kia stated. "Why not immediately move in there?" This caused many of our arguments. I lied to her one day, telling her mom had willed that house to Andrew. And you see the cost I paid for my lie. Kia pursued my stepdad in order to own the house. Kia also lacked knowledge of one other bit of information. I neglected to name myself as the owner of the house when Mom passed away. Andrew wanted to live there till he felt so otherwise. Transferring it to my name would be like he were residing on my land, and I'm sure he wouldn't like that. The name transfer is costly as well, so I let it be as I was short on money at the time. I'm also happy I didn't transfer it since Shia would have been entitled to half of the house following our divorce. Alternatively, if such had been the case, she might not have slept with Andrew. Not known. Still, in any context, a cheater is always a cheater. Indeed, she was unaware that my mother had willed the house to me. She urged me to rethink the divorce. She claimed she could entice Andrew to offer her the house, and should I not divorce her, the mansion would be ours. Laughing at her suggestion, I answered, "No, thank you for the offer. Luck with your mansion." Smoking, she continued, "You're losing a lot with this divorce." Grinning, I answered, "I don't give a if *ck." I don't know whether she was truly that stupid or was trying to spare herself from the humiliation. Nevertheless, it makes no difference. Except for the savings in our joint account, which we divided, she understood I had no significant fortune. After the divorce was official, I felt rather relieved. She would never have split with me at any point if she had come clean about the mansion's ownership. And I cannot pass on that wretch my mom's inheritance. She had buried her own grave by revealing her motivations for dating Andrew, and I was going to use that against her to send Andrew away from her life. During our divorce, I watched Andrew picking her up from court, helping her with all legal issues. I was just waiting for the divorce to pass in order to witness her reaction and break her bubble. Having done it, I'm going to destroy Kia next. Update 2. I sent Andrew the specifics of Kia's confession once my divorce was official. "You know that your mom will give you the mansion, right?" he answered. "Yes, I have her will," I responded. "But Chia doesn't know. She's going to ask you to give her the mansion." Revealing the truth was not doing him any favors. All I wanted was to bust Kia's bubble. The underprivileged girl had been fantasizing of owning my mother's property. Andrew informed me Kia had lately been subtly questioning him about his will and who would get his legacy, but he never understood her intentions since he lacked any wealth to mention. I stopped the conversation at that since I wanted no bro code with Andrew. I finally got a call from Chia. Usually I would not have responded, but this time I did since I understood what it was about. From the other line, she was screaming, "Why did you not tell me your mother willed the house to you? King destroyed me instead. I was practically guarding your property by licking the ass of this old man." Her insults were coming from a place of hurt, hence I was merely laughing at them. I said, "Thanks so much. Good luck with your gold-digging approach." I hung up the call and blocked her then. She contacted me once more from an unidentified number a few days later, perhaps from the phone of a friend or coworker. Andrew had split from her, she told me. He discovered she was with him only for inheritance somehow. And he dumped her since the truth surfaced. He regarded her as avaricious. Andrew turned against her even though she maintained she was helping him deal with loneliness. Her truth had already come out, so I wonder why she was still trying to pass being a devout woman. I answered cynically, "Yes, you have slept with everyone selflessly only for the sake of others. You hardly have any underlying intentions at all." She said she was dating Andrew for my benefit, to get the mansion for me. Now she said she was merely trying to support Andrew through grief and loneliness. Indeed, she possessed a really clean soul. She persisted there as well. She made every effort to reach and attack me. Sometimes begging, other times gaslighting me to get back together. She showed up to my residence, my workplace, and even some frequent public venues I visited. Unbelievably, she even tried to corner me for a talk when she visited my gym. Though I disregarded her as though she were a stranger to me, it was a hell of a nightmare. Technically, she was a stranger since our divorce was done. Update 3. Though my history returned as soon as I moved the mansion's ownership to my name, I felt this story was finished. God knows what her house obsession was about. Who wouldn't want $1 million residence to their name, really? I'm not sure, though, how long it would take her to come to terms with reality. 6 months into my divorce, I made the decision to change the name of the mansion. I hadn't done it before, as I indicated earlier, as I lacked the savings for the ownership change. I could save for the transfer in 4 to 5 months now that I was separated and my spending had dropped significantly. I told Andrew about it before I applied for the transfer. Once I learned about his affair with Kia, he was no longer residing in the house. I asked him not to leave, but he answered that he would remove his last items from the house, and he did. He assigned me house administrative duties, including locking system maintenance. The documentation did not arrive for a few months. I had the house painted in the meantime. I had those cleaned as the pool and the grass hadn't been maintained for a long time. I had no touch with Tia, and based on our most recent talk, Andrew had also broken off with her. Her showing up to the estate during one of the cleaning days confused me then. When I missed there, the housekeeping manager called to let me know a woman had descended and was prowling about the premises. She told them she was my wife when they tried to stop her from entering. So they laughed. Yes, correct. They thought she was a trespasser based on her sensations of the walls and interiors. She was, in fact. I said I had no wife and requested them to kick her out. They followed orders and then confirmed by phone that she had left the house. Not a prize for guessing if she showed up at my house. Yes, she did. Saying I had abandoned her when she did nothing wrong and that her motives were pure, she was screaming and wailing. I advised her to, instead of showing up at my place, get therapy and investigate a mental facility. I refused her demand for me to let her inside to chat. I shut the door squarely in her path. Update 4. On my mansion land, I have also placed a restraining order against Hia. She had not been violent, hence her odds of sneaking into that location or damaging it were limited, but yet I didn't trust her. I had to act in order to protect the rights of the new house occupants. I wished Hia not to cause needless disturbance for them. Until now, it has been seamless. I hope I will have to update this thread further. Hia's chapter should finish so I may continue with my life. Am I the asshole for wearing an over-the-top outfit to my friend's birthday party and overshadowing the host? Original post. Before I begin, English is not my first language, so apologies for typos, bad grammar and punctuation. I'm also on mobile and using a throwaway just in case. So last Friday night my 24M friend, we'll call him Peter, celebrated his 28th birthday. His coworker, that is what he refers to her as, April, offered to organize and host the party. The dress code was, as she put it, your gothic best. Peter loves anything morbid and macabre, so it would fit his taste perfectly. Now I prioritize comfort over looks, which leaves me dressing mostly in scrubs at work or sweats, and hoodies when I'm out and about. Hence April decided to remind me multiple times in an increasingly condescending tone to follow the dress code. So I did just that. I wore a black velvet trouser and waistcoat set with a white 18th century men's shirt, a pirate shirt if you will. All of these items I made completely myself. From drafting the patterns to sewing the shirt completely by hand and adding an embroidery moth across the back of the waistcoat. Now, to the party itself. I ended up arriving later than most people due to being held up at work longer than expected. I warned both Peter and April about it. Peter said it was no problem at all, but I better show up, and April left me on red. So I arrived 40 minutes late, greeted April, congratulated Peter and gave him his gift. Mocktails were drunk and pleasantries were exchanged. Over the course of the night I got a lot of compliments on my outfit, and my craft skills were a topic of conversation several times over the evening. It also didn't really help that when someone asked me where I got the suit or shirt from, Peter would loudly tell them all about how I made everything myself. I remember being spun around a couple of times so people could look/touch the embroidery in the back. Everyone had a good time, or so I thought. Over the weekend, April and her friends ended up bombarding my phone and any social media that they could find with absolutely nasty messages. How I was an attention seeker, how desperate I came across, how I absolutely ruined the party April had been planning for weeks, how dare I steal attention away and overshadow Peter and April. You get the idea. I feel like I'm going a bit insane. Overshadowing anybody was never my intention, especially my friend at his own party, and I don't think that I did. But all of these comments are making me rethink my choices. So am I the asshole here? I really need some outside perspective. Relevant comments. Peter is behind this. I doubt that it's the case. I have known the guy for 10+ years and he never had a problem with people overshadowing him. He is not insecure, and if he's got a problem with someone's actions, he'll say it. He wouldn't send his coworkers' girlfriends to harass a person on his behalf. Commenter, NTA. April has a thing for Peter and sees you as a threat. She's going to find ways to criticize you and tear you down no matter what you do. OOP. I guess it also didn't help that Peter kept his hand on my back for most of the evening, and when he got absolutely wasted put his face in my hair. Commenter. So maybe it's not just April's imagination that you're a threat to her attempts to connect with Peter. OOP. I think the biggest threat is Peter being arrow ace and the way April behaves, not me. Commenter. Could he possibly be demiromantic? Because Peter's behavior that you're describing presents as a little bit more than platonic. Keeping his arm around you, smelling your hair. Those are often actions, though not exclusively OOFC, exhibited by people towards a paramour, or crush, of some degree. And yes, April is the problem. OOP. According to him, he is arrow ace. And he wasn't smelling my hair, more like rubbing his face on the top of my head. He says it's because he likes how my hair feels. He plays with my hair often enough, and when he gets a little too drunk he faces plants into it, though he did it mostly back when we were in uni. Knowing him, it could just be a texture thing, the others liking the outfit. At some point I ended up with like 4 very drunk people rubbing the moth's body. I made it from faux fur, and by extension my back with their fingers. Was a weird experience to say the least. The outfit, I had help when it came to drafting the suit from someone who actually knows what they are doing, LOL. The shirt was made from a bunch of squares, so no problems there. The embroidery is all split stitches and faux fur for the body of the moth. I really made it sound much more impressive than it is. OOP is voted NTA update. This morning showed Peter the post and all of the messages from April and co. Never heard him be this angry. Said he'll deal with them. Turns out April is a pathological liar and had been telling everyone in the office that Peter and her are in a relationship, but are keeping it low-key. She also was taking pictures of him every time she walked by his office and showing them to her friends as proof. So her friends thought that I was trying to steal her man. They aren't even co-workers. She just greets clients at the front desk at the firm Peter works at. Peter ripped her a new one. Their boss, April's uncle, ripped her a new one. The co-worker she lied to ripped her a new one. April ended up throwing a tantrum, and the police were called. The results? April is currently on a 48-hour hold. Peter is moving to work from home full-time. I apologize to April's uncle, mom, and a few friends and co-workers. My husband wanted an open marriage, but it backfired. Now I'm happier without him. Original post. My husband, Leo, 34M, and I, 30F, have been together for 7 years, married for 4 of them. We don't have any kids and we don't intend to. 2 years ago, Leo asked me for an open marriage. I was devastated at the time. I couldn't understand why he didn't just want me. I couldn't even comprehend the idea of sharing him either. He gave me the same song and dance a lot of men give their spouses, swore up and down that he loved me. I just wasn't fulfilling his needs. He needed more than what I could give. It was just to spice up our life. It was just sex, etc., etc. I did ask if there was someone else. He said no. To this day, I'm still not sure if I believed him. But at the time, I was angry and hurt and said no. He pestered me to change my mind for a week before giving me an ultimatum. Open marriage or divorce? I chose the open marriage. I just couldn't bear the thought of him leaving me at the time. We have rules. We can't bring any partners home. We have to get tested for STD every 3 months. 1 weekend out of the month must be left free for us time. Any money we spend on with our partners must come from our personal accounts. I didn't partake in the open marriage myself for the first 3 months. Leo obviously did right away. He seemed to be gone or out late almost all the time, but he always acted so happy and loving towards me while I felt like I was dying inside. It killed me to think he was sleeping with other women, and I felt so lonely and unattractive and not good enough. I told my sister, Katie, 26F, and a few close friends everything. Katie told me to just play his game and be part of the open marriage too. If he can sleep around, so could I. I honestly didn't have much confidence in myself at the time. I'm a bit overweight and I've never considered myself conventionally pretty. I was afraid this would just humiliate me further. Katie and my best friend Jessie, 30F, set up my online dating profiles for me. I got so many matches that it was overwhelming. When I told Leo, he was surprised, but told me to do whatever I thought was best. Jessie helped me choose my first date, and I actually had a great time. He didn't pressure me for sex and took me out to drinks and dinner. We did have sex eventually, but it was all just casual and we didn't see each other after a couple months of casual dating. That first guy really made me feel more confident in myself. So I kept going on dates with men. A lot of them wanted to treat me, so I didn't have to spend much of my own money. Not only that, but some of the men have given me the best sex I've ever had in my life. Almost like the kind of sex you read in romance novels. It's been amazing. I am currently seeing 2 different men, alongside Leo. One, Mark, 38M, is more of a steady boyfriend I've been with for about 6 months, and the one, Steven, 25M, is very casual, mostly just hanging out and sex. They know about my open marriage, other relationships, and are fine with it. My husband has not been so lucky. In the beginning, he definitely was. He was always out and about and didn't seem to care even when I started dating too. But now he just complains a lot and hasn't been going out much. He whines about how he's usually the one spending money. A lot of the women he tries to be with want an emotional connection before sex. He often wants to be with younger women, but they want younger men. He's also been upset that I go out with random guys so often while he's at home alone all the time. He hasn't asked to close the marriage yet, but I feel like he will soon. He keeps saying he misses us and wants to spend more time together. He tried to initiate sex a lot more too. He wants to go on dates and go on vacations and all that stuff more and more. And he gets upset when I tell him I can't because I've already scheduled to do stuff with my partners, mostly Mark. Honestly, I don't think I love Leo anymore. I care about him, but I just don't love him. I'm not saying I love Mark or Steven, but I honestly feel closer to Mark nowadays than I do Leo. Mark makes me feel comfortable and safe, and I love spending time with him more than my own husband. Steven is funny and sweet and really good at sex. Katie and Jesse have been wanting me to divorce for a year now, but I was afraid of hurting him and thought I still loved him. But I think my love for him died when he asked for this open marriage in the first place. Seeing him get all pissy about it now just because he's not benefiting from it is also a turnoff for me too. But I don't know if divorce is the best option. I still care about him and I still don't want to hurt him. Maybe if he finally asks to close the marriage, we can talk about it then. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Divorce. You're happier without him. He would only want to close the marriage because he can't get laid, not that he only loves you. OP. We've just been together for so long that the idea of him not being there feels weird. Which sounds stupid since I have 2 other partners, so it's not like I'll be lonely. But Leo was a part of my life for so long that for him to not be there just doesn't feel right. But you're probably right. OP on her husband dismissing her feelings regarding the open marriage. OP. I really do think Leo does love me, in his own way. Even when he was more active in the open marriage, he still made time for me and still did a lot with him, for me. But you're probably right on the divorce. Comment 2. Part of the issue is the main relationship is supposed to be the important one, so the whole 1 weekend a month for us time wasn't enough. OP. I actually did argue that in the beginning, but he insisted that he needed to keep his weekends free. He did spend a lot of time at home during the weekdays, so in his mind, that made up for it. Comment 3. What if he finds evidence of your open marriage and frames you as a cheater and then brings you to the cleaners? At this point, I wouldn't trust Leo. What you're experiencing is normalcy. You're used to his presence in your life. But how long are you going to live like this? OP. Jesse had the same train of thought of you and actually took screenshots of his dating profiles during the beginning of the open marriage. She also told me to save screenshots of any texts we had about the open marriage. I don't think Leo would do that, but I also didn't think he'd ever ask for an open marriage, so what do I know? Update 1. Hi everyone. I got so many comments and messages on my last post, which got deleted for some reason, that I was a bit overwhelmed. Especially when a lot of you kept saying the same thing. Divorce, divorce, divorce. But the thing is, I think a part of me still loves my husband. I know in my last post that I didn't think I loved him anymore, but I can't just forget about the things that I do love. I love when he sings in the shower. I love when he laughs so hard he snorts. I love when he kisses my forehead when I've had a bad day. I love when he holds my hand when we watch TV together. Leo has done a lot of shitty things, but he really isn't the big asshole people think. Maybe that was my fault. But even if I do still love him, I'm not in love with him anymore. I don't think I have been for a while. I care about him, a part of me does still love him, but you all were right. I should have just divorced him when he gave me that ultimatum in the first place. This past Saturday, we had the big talk. I initiated it, but he didn't seem too surprised. I just told him that I noticed he didn't seem to like me going out with Mark or Steven and asked if there was a problem. He said there was. But he didn't ask me to close the marriage. He just asked me if I still loved him. I said something like, not like I used to. He broke down crying, which made me cry. I guess he had known for a while that I wasn't in love anymore, but he had hoped he could win me back if he funneled all of his energy into me. I was honest and told him that during those first 3 months of our open marriage, I think my love for him died and I just couldn't get it back. I did tell him that I still cared about him and that I did love him, but it's not the same as it was. He asked if I loved Mark or Steven, and I said no. I like being with them and I care about them a lot, but I can't say I'm in love with either of them. I also finally asked him why he wanted an open marriage in the first place. A lot of you in the comments said he already had someone lined up, and you were right. He had someone at work he was interested in and she wanted him too. The open marriage was just to get permission. He honestly never expected me to also get my own partners because of how unconfident I was, but he didn't want to stop me either because he thought nothing would come of it. He didn't really like me seeing other men, but he knew it wouldn't have been fair to tell me no when I gave him permission first. I guess Mark and Steven made him insecure because I was spending so much time with them on a regular basis. The open marriage was just sex on the side for him. He only did hookups and they never lasted long. He genuinely always just loved me. But he thought I was falling in love with my partners and he was losing me and wanted to win me back. We cried a lot and talked a lot. We've decided to get a divorce. Since the house is in his name, I'm going to move out and live with Katie for a while. He told me I didn't have to and I could stay until the divorce was finalized, but I just can't. It's too hard to even look at him sometimes. I don't know how I feel, to be honest. I thought I would be relieved or sad, but I'm just tired. I wish I could have been like you all wanted me to be, clapping back or being sarcastic and snarky or rubbing it in his face, but I don't feel like I've won anything. I just feel lost. Relevant comments. Comment 1. I'm wondering if maybe the other woman ended it so now he was back to what he was comfortable with, his wife. He went and had his fun, and when that died out, he was not left with a wife waiting for him at home. OP. He and his co-worker were only sleeping together for maybe a month. She fulfilled his kinks that I never liked indulging in. That's why he was with most of his partners, because I wasn't interested in his kinks. Comment 2. He stepped out of this marriage first and tried to have his cake and eat it too. The thing with open marriages is that you can never count on how emotions will change. Sex is a very intimate action, and many people will develop emotional connections. Those connections come at a price. He placed a bet and he lost. At least he's man enough to acknowledge it and own up to it. There is no easy answer. OP, I wish you healing, OP. Thank you. Leo just thought the open marriage would be a way for him to get all of his kinks he couldn't do with me, because I wasn't into it. He knew how unconfident I was. Which wasn't because of him. A lot of people seem to think that he eroded my self-esteem, but he didn't. We can thank my mother for that, but that's a whole other can of worms. So he never expected me to partake in the open marriage either. Comment 3. So he never expected me to partake in the open marriage either. So basically, while he asked for a mutually open marriage, he expected it to be only his side open and then got hurt that reality didn't meet his expectations. OOP, Leo admitted that he did only expect his side to be open. He was never going to stop me from opening my side, but like I said, he didn't think I would. TBH, I don't think I would have either if it wasn't for Jesse and Katie pushing me and making profiles for me. Update 2. Hey, it's been a while. It feels like both a lot and nothing has happened. I still have a lot of feelings, but I'm also just really tired. Leo and I are still in the middle of our divorce. It's been as amicable as a divorce can be. Since we mutually agreed to it and we had a prenup, it's been pretty easy splitting everything else 50-50. My lawyer says I should be divorced by the end of the year. Leo is insistent on giving me alimony, but I'm not really interested. Thanks to a lot of people making me think about Leo's explanation for the open marriage, I did approach him about it again and asked him to be 100% honest with me about that girl from work. He admitted there was more to it than he admitted. This is what he explained to me, and I have decided to believe him. Even if he's lying, it doesn't really matter anymore since we're getting divorced. I also just have little energy to care about the details at this point. According to him, this is the timeline. He was posting on Reddit about his kinks for advice and such, which I did know about beforehand. He was getting messages from this one user and they just kept talking back and forth. He mentions my name to the user in a conversation, which he let me read. During his lunch break, his coworker, I'll call her Mary, approaches him and asks if he uses Reddit and asks about his handle. He confirms, and then Mary tells her he's the user he's been talking to. They start talking more and more in real life as friends and eventually start talking through IG. He also showed me these conversations. The conversations were mostly just memes and jokes with occasional flirts, mentioning of kinks. At one point, she says it's too bad he's not single. This is when he decided to demand the open marriage, because Mary was clearly into him and into the same kinks, and she could sexually satisfy him since I was unable to. That's how he basically said it anyway. Truth be told, we did have some bad difficulties before the open marriage was brought up. I'm very vanilla, and he discovered his kinks after we were married. I tried them all for him, but I just couldn't get into it and he didn't like seeing me struggle, so he didn't try to bring them into the bedroom again after it was obvious I didn't like it. So we did have sexual compatibility issues. Maybe we were doomed to fail even without the open marriage ultimatum. Our families, outside of my sister, were shocked when we told everyone we were getting a divorce. They always thought we were so happy and in love. My mom blames me, which I expected, but it still hurts. They don't know about the open marriage, and Leo and I plan to keep it that way. I think he is ashamed to tell them. I am too, if I'm being honest. I really thought Leo was the love of my life. He was my first for almost everything. I said we were together for 7 years, but we were friends since college. I've known him for nearly 12 years, and we're about to become strangers soon. I still mourn my marriage, even though Katie and Jesse keep telling me this is for the best. They're both definitely thrilled, they don't hide it, but they also know this has been a weird time for me. I just don't know how to feel. I thought I would feel free or relieved or heartbroken or something, but I just feel weird. Like I lost a part of myself and I don't know how to get it back. I'm still living with Katie, but I'll be moving out soon. I found a 1-bedroom apartment that's near Jesse, so I won't be completely alone. Mark offered to let me move in with him, but I declined. Honestly, we're kind of on standby. He knows I'm having a hard time processing my feelings about my husband and the end of my marriage. I think he wants us to be official, but I don't know. I really do like Mark and I don't want to lose him, but I feel like I need to figure myself out first. As for Steven, we ended our relationship at the beginning of August. He got a job offer in another state and took it. Even though it was casual, I did cry a little. Steven is a great guy. Whenever he does decide to settle down into something serious, the woman who gets him will be a lucky one. We've been texting here and there, but it's mostly just sending each other TikToks and polite, "Hope you're doing well" messages. Some people asked me if I wanted to go back to monogamy, even after experimenting and clearly getting into this poly relationship I had going on. And the answer is yes, I do. Even though Mark and Steven were great and I met plenty of great guys during my open marriage, I don't know if I've really been happy with myself or my choices. I also think I felt guilty a lot too, like I was somehow cheating on Leo, Mark and Steven even though it was all consensual. Polyamory and open relationships may work for some people, but it's really just not for me. Jesse says I need to get a therapist. I've tried looking, but finding a therapist that's both available and seems like a good fit is a pain. Hopefully I can find one by the time the divorce is settled. I also want to figure out what to do about Mark on my own. I don't want to lead him on and give him false hope. Maybe we should take a break, or maybe I should tell him to just break up with me. He should find his own happiness without worrying about me. Relevant comments. Commenter, you're numb. It happens when you lose your partner and you're grieving, and under a great deal of stress. I think Reddit as a whole takes divorce really blithely, but I read once that divorce is one of the most stressful life events, right after death of a loved one. And I'm slightly curious. You say your family is shocked that you're divorcing, because you seem so in love, but the fact that your friends are delighted you're leaving your husband tells me that they've witnessed some not so great relationship dynamics. OP. Katie and Jesse were the only ones I told about the open marriage, so they're glad it finally ended in divorce. None of my other friends or family members know. Commenter, I've read all of your posts, and I don't know why you're still protecting your ex by not telling people what he bullied you into doing. He had the girl all picked out and wanted your approval so he could cheat. Tell the damn world. I would. You have nothing to be ashamed about. Don't let your mother put the blame on you. You need a therapist who will help you build your self-esteem. OP, I just feel embarrassed I let it get to this point, I guess. I probably should have just gone with the divorce when the ultimatum was first issued. Commenter, I'm glad you are healing. It sounds like Mark wants more than you can give him right now. Focus on healing and finding out who you are outside of this marriage. It's sad that your STBX ruined a loving marriage for kink sex. I'm glad you are divorcing. You deserve better. Definitely get therapy. It will help you navigate the next part of your life. After 14 years, I discovered my son wasn't mine. My wife left for his rich biological dad, but in court, my son revealed a shocking truth about them. It never occurred to me that I would be authoring a piece like this. My entire world has been turned upside down, and I am having a hard time making sense of all that has happened. My guess is that I ought to begin at the very beginning. Before yesterday, I was under the impression that my life was going very well. I am a man who is 35 years old. My wife Rebecca and I have been married for 14 years, and we have a son named Adam who is also 14 years old. When Rebecca got the news that she was expecting, we decided to be married. Although I had no intention of becoming a father, I was delighted to take on the role. I have loved Adam with every single fiber of my being ever since the minute he was born. I witnessed his first steps, his first words, and every other significant moment that has occurred since then. For the purpose of ensuring that we had sufficient funds to provide him with a pleasant life, I worked 2 jobs. Although it was not always simple, I never once grumbled about it. Isn't that what fathers are supposed to do? I made it a point to constantly strive to be the best possible father I could be. In addition to attending all of Adam's soccer games, I assisted him with his homework and gave him instruction on how to ride a bike. Every year throughout the summer, my kid and I would go on camping excursions together, just the 2 of us. In my entire life, those were some of the most memorable moments. Despite the fact that I was not flawless, I always prioritized my family. I went to great lengths to ensure that Adam had everything he required for school, even if it meant there were occasions when I had to skip lunch at work. For his birthday the previous year, I put up money for months in order to purchase him the most recent gaming machine. When he opened it, the expression on his face was worth every extra shift that I worked over and over again. Just like any other relationship, Rebecca and I had our share of highs and lows, but I always assumed that we were content. In the month prior, we celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary by having a delicious meal at our house. Even a card was designed for us by Adam. Our refrigerator still has it, or at least it did before. Yesterday began in the same manner as any other day. First thing in the morning, I went to my first job, and then in the afternoon, I did my second job. I was looking forward to making it home and eating dinner with my family when I finally arrived. Nevertheless, I saw that something was odd when I stepped through the door. The house had an excessively low volume. The majority of the time, Rebecca would be in the kitchen, while Adam would be either watching television or playing video games. On the other hand, there was nothing. There were no sounds, and there were no smells, just quiet. Although I yelled out for them, there was no response to my appeal. I went to Adam's room, thinking that perhaps he was doing so because he was wearing headphones and couldn't hear me, but his room was completely vacant. It was missing a few of his favorite books and some of his favorite outfits. As I made my way to our bedroom, my heart began to beat really fast. After that, I noticed the note that was sitting on the bedside table. Rebecca's handwriting was clear and legible. It was difficult for me to pick it up and begin reading since my hands were shaking. During the time that has passed, the contents of the note have been playing over and over again in my head. Rebecca informed me in writing that she and Adam were going to leave me. That, however, was not even the most terrible aspect. The fact that I am not Adam's biological father was disclosed by her. It was just before we started dating that Rebecca had a brief relationship with another man, as stated in the note. When she discovered that she was pregnant, she took it for granted that it was my child. According to her, she was able to persuade herself that it was genuine because she desired for it to be true. However, suddenly, after a period of 14 years, Adam's biological father had returned to the conversation. As Rebecca wrote, he expressed his want to be a part of their life and she had made the decision to provide him with the opportunity to do so. Adam, she added, deserved to know who his biological father was. It seemed as if I was unable to take a breath. This place was whirling around. I made my way to the bed and sat down, attempting to make sense of what I had just read. What the heck might be going on here? What could Rebecca possibly have done to me, to us? As I continued to read the note, I hoped to find some explanation that would make sense of everything that was going on. Rebecca expressed her regret in writing that she had lied for all of these years. In spite of the fact that she was aware that it was unethical, she stated that she was afraid of losing me and of being a single mother. In her statement, she asserted that Adam's biological father was prosperous and had the ability to provide them with a better life. In her letter, she mentioned that Adam was looking forward to meeting his biological father and beginning a new life. It was that particular region that caused the most pain. For the past 14 hours, I have been attempting to make sense of everything that has happened. I've experienced every feeling that can possibly be imagined, including shock, anger, despair, and betrayal. Over the course of the past day, I have shed more tears than I have in my whole life. Every time I think about Adam, I am reminded of all the times we have spent together, such as when I taught him how to tie his shoelaces, when I stayed up all night to cheer him on during his soccer games, and when I stayed up all night when he had the flu. Were all of those memories a fabrication? I can't help but wonder whether Adam ever had any suspicions about anything. Did he ever get the impression that I wasn't his true father? Did Rebecca ever make a passing reference to it? It seemed like we had a wonderful relationship, but now I'm having second thoughts about everything. I have attempted to contact Rebecca and Adam by calling and messaging them, but both of their phones are currently turned off. I went so far as to drive by Rebecca's parents' house, just in case they were there, but there was no indication that they were there. I have the impression that my entire life has been a lie. Having been a husband and a father for the past 14 years, I have devoted my entire existence to these roles. I've put in a lot of effort to make sure that my family is taken care of, and now, in the blink of an eye, everything that I've paid for is gone. I have no idea what to do at this point. Without them, the house has a certain emptiness about it. Due to the fact that I am unable to concentrate on anything, I have taken a few days off from work. All the while, I keep praying that this is all just a nightmare and that when I wake up, I will find them here. For my family, there is a part of me that wants to fight. Even though Adam is not my biological son, I have been his parent for the past 14 years. Isn't that something that should be considered? However, when I consider the fact that Rebecca has betrayed me, I find myself wondering if I will ever be able to trust her again. The idea of employing a lawyer has crossed my mind, but I have no idea how to get started with the process. As Adam's non-biological father, do I have any rights or responsibilities? Do you think Rebecca could just take him away like this? It is so overwhelming and I feel so lost. I have also contemplated making an effort to locate them, but I am unsure whether or not this is the appropriate course of action. Do I have the authority to interfere with Adam's desire to be with his biological father if he is truly interested in doing so? Not only does the idea of never seeing him again make me feel sick to my stomach, but I also want him to be content. Rebecca has been dishonest with me for all of these years, and I am furious with her. Her sudden departure in such a manner, without even providing me with the opportunity to discuss the matter, has left me feeling upset. On the other hand, I am primarily devastated by Adam. Be damned by biology, he is my actual son. For the past 14 years I have loved him and reared him. Is it possible to simply delete that? Despite the fact that I am humiliated and ashamed, I have considered making contact with Rebecca's family or others who are acquaintances with us both. Because I have been ignorant of the truth for all of these years, I feel like an idiot. What if they were all aware of it but chose to conceal it from me? Considering everything else that is going on, I don't think I would be able to accept that treachery. There is a portion of me that feel resentment at Adam's biological father as well. Where has he been for the past 14 years? It is unclear why he chose to return at this time. Had he been aware of Adam from the beginning? There is no way for me to acquire answers to the many questions that I have. Like you, I'm worried about Adam. He is abandoning all he is familiar with, including his home, his friends, and his school. Is this really the direction that he should go in? In addition, what about this man? Who is his biological father? Describe the kind of guy he is. Does he have the same love and concern for Adam that I have? Without them, the house has a certain emptiness about it. No matter how hard I try, I just can't seem to force myself to enter Adam's room. His dirty clothing is still in the hamper, and his soccer trophies are still sitting on the shelf for him to admire. They appear to have hurriedly fled, abandoning a significant portion of their lives in the process. As a result of my lack of knowledge of other options, I am creating this post. Does anyone else have any experience with something similar to this? How are you able to deal with it? What are the chances that I will be able to develop a romantic connection with Adam in the years to come? I appreciate you taking the time to read this. Simply letting everything out, even if it's to complete strangers on the internet, can be a little bit of a relief. I never imagined that I would find myself in this predicament, yet here I am. It's possible that life might change in a moment and you never know what's going to happen. Update. Since it has been a few months since my last article, I felt it was important to bring you all up to speed on what has transpired. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone for their support throughout what has been the most difficult period of my life. Kind comments and sound counsel meant more to me than you could possibly know. I received divorce papers from Rebecca not long after I made my original post. It came as a surprise to me when I saw it in black and white, despite the fact that I had anticipated it. At that moment, everything seemed so conclusive and so true. After the initial numbness subsided, I came to the realization that it was necessary for me to actively defend my rights as Adam's father. Without putting up a fight, I couldn't just stand by and let them keep him. I chose to call a lawyer. Financially, it was difficult, especially with Rebecca and Adam gone, but I knew I had to do it. I came upon a respectable attorney ready to handle the payments with me. Given that I'm not Adam's biological father, he cautioned me from the beginning that it would be an uphill fight, but I was resolved to try. The court system was cruel, far more than I had anticipated. The biological father of Rebecca and Adam, David, seemed to have endless means. Given David's reportedly great riches, things got even more challenging for me. Hiring a strong counsel, it soon became evident they would be playing dirty in court. Rebecca and David presented me as a lazy parent unable to support Adam. They brought up my 2 jobs and twisted it to suggest I was never around. They discussed how David might provide Adam with a better life with private schools and luxury trips. Friends of theirs even said they had witnessed me ignore Adam or treat him angrily. I thought I could be in a dream. All I had done out of love for my family was being turned against me. Turning 2 jobs into support for them became neglect. The camping trips Adam and I enjoyed were written off as cheap holidays. Their response appeared to cover everything, and I was beginning to lose hope. Though my attorney gave his all, we were outgunned everywhere. David's money seemed to change everything. Expert witnesses speaking on the value of biological ties were present. Child psychologists testified about how Adam might be better off in a more steady financial environment. They seemed to have covered everything. I got ready for the worst, maybe losing Adam permanently. It was nearly intolerable to consider never seeing him again, of someone else raising him and being called dad. There were evenings when I couldn't sleep. I would lie awake and consider all the events I would miss. Then, though, something unanticipated occurred. The court decided Adam himself wanted to be heard. I trembled. And if Rebecca and David had turned him against me? Suppose he expressed wanting to live with them. Hearing Adam declare he wanted me no more made me wonder whether I could manage. I hardly could breathe when Adam stood up. But what followed turned everything around. Adam added, "I want to live with my dad, my real dad, the one who raised me," straight ahead toward the judge. What I was hearing defied belief. Adam continued by saying that he loved our camping vacations, that I was a wonderful parent, and how I always made time to assist him with his homework, even though I was exhausted from work. He spoke of how I taught him to ride a bike, how I never missed a soccer game, and how I always made him feel loved and supported. Adam then let forth a bombshell. He told the court David's mother and dad had been attempting to guide him on what to say. Late at night, he claimed he overheard them strategizing how to make me appear worse. They had advised him to say I was often furious and exhausted, that I didn't give his schooling any thought, and that I was negligent. Adam declared he couldn't carry on with it. He knew it was untrue and couldn't lie about the guy who had been at his side all of his life. He even brought up particular exchanges he had heard Rebecca and David talking about how to falsify the facts and testimonial proof against me. The courtroom went still. On Rebecca and David's faces, I could sense shock. Attentively listening, the judge asked Adam several questions to help him to define what he had heard and experienced. Adam told the judge about a conversation he had overheard in which David proposed they bribe some of my colleagues to testify. I regularly complained about Adam or seemed uninterested in his life. Rebecca had been initially reluctant, he added, but David persuaded her it was essential to guarantee they would win. He also recalled overhearing them talk about coaching Adam's teachers to say, "I never showed up for parent-teacher conferences," which was untrue. Though it meant missing business, I had always made time for those. Adam said he missed me and our life together and felt afraid and perplexed by all of this. The hearing's whole tone changed following Adam's testimony. The judge directed Rebecca and David to look into their activities, including efforts at manipulation of a minor's testimony. Their attorney seemed uncomfortable, and I could see Rebecca and David furiously speaking to one another. Reviewing all the evidence and Adam's testimony, the court spent several days. Among the longest days I have ever lived were those. After hearing Adam, I was encouraged. However, I also felt afraid to allow myself hope things would turn around. At last the day arrived for the judge to render his ruling. As we gathered in the courtroom, I was a frightened wreck. The judge began by noting that he had given great thought to all the data offered as well as Adam's testimony. While financial stability is crucial, he noted, a child's best interests are determined by other factors as well. He noted that even though it meant working 2 jobs, I had regularly met Adam's needs. He noted that I had always made time for what mattered most in Adam's life and complimented my commitment to his schooling and extracurricular activities. Regarding Rebecca and David's attempts to control the case and guide Adam's evidence, the court also expressed great worry. This, he claimed, indicated a disrespect for Adam's emotional health and begged questions about their parenting competency. The judge decided at last to award me complete custody of Adam. He added that Adam's wishes and well-being came first and that it was obvious I had been a caring and committed father. He said years of love, care, and dedication define the link between a parent and their child more than just biology. With regard to the divorce, it was approved. I had no want to stay married to Rebecca after all that had happened. Given their attempts to control the case, the judge additionally mandated Rebecca and David pay my legal fees. The comfort and happiness I experienced upon the judge's judgment is difficult to articulate. I started crying as Adam hurried to embrace me. It was as though a weight had been offloaded from my shoulders. I felt as though I could breathe once more, first in months. The last few weeks had been spent learning about our new normal. Adam and I share an ancient house. Financially, it's challenging, but we're making it work. I have to cut back on some things, but Adam knows. He even volunteered to contribute by working a part-time job, but I advised him to concentrate on school and growing up. Adam has been quite remarkable over all of this. He's in therapy to help him sort through all that's happened. I find great pride in his maturity and fortitude. We have had some lengthy conversations on family, faith, and what it means to be a parent. Though it hasn't always been simple, I believe our experience is helping us both grow. Rebecca and David have visiting rights. Adam has made it plain he does not want to see them right now. I'm letting him lead on that. I wouldn't want to put him in any scenario he finds uncomfortable forced upon him. When Adam feels ready, the therapist has advised we go slowly and perhaps begin with supervised visits. Personally, I'm in therapy trying to sort out the stress of the past few months and the betrayal. Though it's not simple, I'm going day by day. I'm beginning to believe once more that even in the worst of circumstances, good things can happen. I had to adjust somewhat at work. My managers have been understanding when I presented the circumstances. I have cut back on some hours to be home more with Adam. Though monetarily tighter, being there for Adam is well worth it. We are gradually coming to our new rhythm. Most evenings today, Adam and I make dinner together. Though we're both really bad at it, we're learning and having a lot of fun throughout. Starting a weekly movie night, we are working through all the classic movies I liked growing up. I want to thank everyone who helped and advised me on my first post. Sometimes the only thing keeping me going was your nice comments. To anybody else experiencing something like this, keep on. The truth finds a way to surface. I am looking forward to the future, as is Adam. Just the two of us enjoy old times, hence this summer we are going camping. It excites both of us as an opportunity to reconnect and create fresh memories. Still difficult are the times ahead. I know there will be difficult days when the hurt and resentment return. Adam and I can, however, also conquer anything together. We shall always have each other no matter what. I appreciate it all once more. It implies more than you're aware of. Here marks fresh starts and the family we will pick. Mom abandoned us, leaving me to raise my brother. Now she's dying and needs my kidney. My brother pleads for me to save her. What should I do? I, 29F, need some outside ideas since I'm in a terribly mess-up state. Saying no will cause our family balance to be destroyed, and I'm under pressure to give a kidney to my estranged mother, 52F. We learned my mother's kidneys are failing last month. She must start dialysis, which is not ideal long-term, according to the experts. She needs a transplant right away. Out of the two children of my mother, I am a perfect match, and Ezra, my brother, is incompatible. They tested me and my brother. There is really crazy pressure to donate. Saying it's a chance to heal our family and atone for Mom, Ezra is asking me to do it. He doesn't understand that I am not the one who left. I am not interested in healing anything. It was not me that decided on drugs instead of family. It feels like a smack in the face when he asks me to save the mother he hardly knew at the price of the sister who reared him. Though my dad, 54M, is not directly pressing me, I can see optimism in his eyes. Though he claims he will help whatever I decide, it is clear he wants me to do it. It makes me ill since he is dreaming of having his lovely family returned. Mom hasn't straight up asked me for the kidney, but every time I see her I can sense the question hovering about. Part of me wants to scream at her and find out where this worry originated throughout my 13-year raising of her child. Knowing her life is in my control, another element seems strangely strong. Here's a little background since, although you might assume I'm vengeful, I am not. My mother disappeared from my life 16 years ago along with my brother. He was 5 years old and I was 13. She was hooked on drugs, and one day she simply disappeared, leaving our dad. Dad made every effort, but he had to work insane hours to have food on the table and a roof over our heads. Dad always worked, hence I essentially had to raise Ezra. At 13 years old, I was helping him with homework, making sure he ate, and trying to explain Mom's absence from the scene. It sucked, massive scale. I was so busy playing Mom, so I missed out on childhood. Growing up, I was furious with everyone. Mad at Mom for leaving, mad at Dad for not being there enough, mad at Ezra for needing me so much, and mad at myself for not being able to make everything right. While I was figuring out how to split a package of mac and cheese into 2 meals, I saw other children lead typical lives. Ezra found it easier. I confirm this. Though it meant I could not. I wanted him to have as normal a life as possible. I concealed my own tears so I could clean his, lied to him about why we cannot afford things, acted as though everything was fine when Dad and I were hysterical about finances, and so on. It was abundantly evident as we grew older how different our early years were. Ezra went sports and hung out with friends. I was too busy becoming a mini adult to engage in any of that. This widened our gulf greatly and got more pronounced with time. Dad was doing his best, I understand now, but back then it felt as though both of my parents had dropped me. Though it still stung, I know Dad had to decide between being here physically and ensuring we wouldn't go without food. During my teens and early 20s, I was messy. I drove people away, made poor mistakes, and partied too excessively. Starting to handle all this baggage required years of therapy. Things improved when I met my 31M hubby. Though he has been quite patient and sympathetic, my prior problems surfaced even with him. I panicked out when he initially discussed starting a family. Being in charge of a child brought back all these ancient anxieties. We worked for 2 years to reach a point where I felt okay about trying for a baby. 6 months of trying have gone by now. This is now when my mother came back. She simply showed up on my dad's doorway brilliantly and early, like an abandoned child at an orphanage. Not wasting any time, my father allowed her in and summoned Ezra and me in for a family meeting. My mother struck me as a stranger. She wanted to write things and said she was clean. Though Ezra was all for it, I was dubious as heck. It was simpler for him to forgive her, as he cannot recall the worst of times she spent doing drugs. I saw it. My mother was my personal hell. Still, my dad urged us to give her some time, which infuriated me. Though I stayed away for their family reunion, I could tell he was eager to see the lady he used to love. Before I left, I hardly spoke a word to my mother. Living with my dad once more, during the last few months, my mother has been working to mend connections with us. She kept her cleanliness, found employment, and expressed regret for her actions. But for me it is too little too late. I have been polite, but I cannot regard her as my mother anymore. That dumb fool Ezra wholeheartedly accepted her return. He always talks about the fun they spend together and how wonderful it is to have a mother once more. It triggers my desire to yell. Like he has forgotten all I did for him, all we went through. Boom, my mother was diagnosed, so I tried to pay attention to my life and not worry. Ezra was crying. My father was crying. And I wished I could have been anywhere else but that hospital room. Indeed, Ezra was keen to be a donor when the doctor discussed the complications of dialysis and the large transplant list my mother would have to join. I agreed with his choice, but he hauled me along too when he was checked for compatibility, and I turned out to be the ideal fit. Not signing the organ donation form, I hurried out of the hospital right away. Why ought I to sign it? Right now, my father and brother claim I have an unforgiving attitude and a stone heart. Instead, they are rallying around my mother and neglecting me. Although my husband swears he will support me no matter what, I can see he is anxious. He has been excellent through all this. He worries about the surgical hazards and how they might interfere with our intended baby-bearing plans. He also notes how hard I have worked in therapy and doesn't want anything to reverse all that improvement. To add to the craziness, my aunt, Mom's sister, 50F, just called tonight. She told me what was a bombshell of sorts. She hasn't forgiven my mother for leaving everyone either. Turns out Mom had been cheating on Dad with a married man and had been pregnant, thus leaving us was not only due in part to drugs. She departed to have the kid and a fresh life, bailing on us once and permanently blaming drug addiction as justification. Though I really don't know how that worked out or why she came back, learning this has opened all the old scars. Mom departed when she had a decision to stay as well as when she abandoned us. I might never run upon a half-sibling out there wherever. I'm still trying to make sense of it. I haven't yet told anyone else in the family about this. Knowing this secret together with all the renal pressure is making me crazy. Thinking about my terrible upbringing and wondering whether I missed some indicators, I stay up all night. I'm wondering every sacrifice I made, every part of my youth I gave up, and how it compares to what I now know about Mom's actual leaving motivation. Ezra is clueless on any of this fresh material. He keeps urging me to donate the kidney, discussing family responsibility and how this could fix everything. But all I can think of is how he got to have a childhood while I was busy parenting him. Dad likewise doesn't know. He seems all soft about Mom once more, and it makes me want to shake him and remind him of all the misery she caused. I am rather conflicted. It almost seems too much to consider having major surgery and forfeiting an organ for someone who decided to drop me. I consider the hazards and how they might skew my odds of becoming pregnant. Already, I have given up so much for this family. My youth, my opportunity to be a normal child, my sense of security. Giving up a bit of my body seems excessive. The villain is me right now. What then, Reddit, is the outcome? Am I the asterisk hole for turning down to donate my estranged mother my kidney? Is my attachment to the past excessive? I am the only one who recalls how terrible things actually were and the only one who paid Mom the whole cost for her decisions. This is drowning me with decisions. Every decision seems bad in some capacity. How can I manage this unworkable scenario without totally losing my sanity? Help me right here on Reddit. Update 1. Hi Reddit, I expected no one would interact with this post, hence I intended to delete it 24 hours later. The volume of upvotes and comments this is getting is ridiculous though. I would like to first thank everyone for their opinions on my circumstances. Reading through all of it has given me something to consider. Though I have to be honest, some of the comments urging me to forgive and forget really irritate me. I value those who took the time to grasp my viewpoint. I understand Ephesians 4:32, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. Though a great concept, you know what? Sometimes forgiveness is more complicated than a Bible chapter. Not only did my mother's actions affect one day or 1 week, they molded my whole life. I lost my childhood, my sense of safety, and my faith in the people meant to be watching out for me. You cannot just wipe that with a hug and some kind words. And to all those arguing, but she's your mother. Biology does not always inspire love or respect. Sure, my mother delivered me, but I am the one who had to grow up too quickly and had to be a mother to my younger brother when she cannot be bothered. When she was out high and leaving her children to fend for themselves, where was all this family is everything conversation? Look, I'm not aiming to be resentful or nasty. Despite all she has put me through, I am attempting to safeguard the life I have created. A few of you have mentioned complete family therapy. When she returned first, we tried that. It did not miraculously make everything right. Although my mother said all the right things and shed tears, it did not undo years of struggle and desertion. Many of you have brought out the dangers of kidney donation, and I value that. It goes beyond the procedure itself to include long-term consequences. Suppose I have issues that compromise my capacity for childbearing. What happens if I need kidneys later in life? For someone who didn't give second thought to sacrificing me, am I meant to give my health and maybe my future? My hubby has heard me discuss all of this. He reminded me that I had nothing to owe anyone, not even my mother, so it's acceptable to give my own well-being top priority. The thought of compromising that for someone who has been more of a stranger than a mother is simply too much. We are still trying for a baby. My family's pressure hasn't let up. Ezra has been text-blowing my phone with messages ranging from extreme rage to guilt-tripping. He even ventured to remark that I would be no better than Mom was when she left us if I let her die. That one hurts. I cannot lie. Dad has been more subdued, but every time we speak he sounds disappointed. They seem to have all forgotten what I went through, what we went through. And then there is my mother. At last she plucked the bravery to give me a straight call. I let it drop off to voicemail. Her message was difficult to hear. She was crying and telling me she is afraid of dying even though she knows she does not deserve my support. Though a large part of me remembered all the times I was terrified and alone due to her choices, part of me wanted to reassure her. Regarding what my aunt revealed regarding Mom's affair and the baby she turned over, I still haven't told anyone. Every time I consider bringing it up, I picture Dad's expression. How it would destroy Ezra's recently discovered relationship with Mom. But hiding this is eating me inside. Carrying the weight of her mistakes, it feels like I am shielding her all over once more. This update most likely makes me sound frigid and merciless. Maybe I am. I am exhausted yet as well. Weary of having to be the one who must be strong and sacrifice-bearing. I want to put myself first for once without feeling bad about it. That's where I am right now. Still conflicted, still aching, still unsure about the correct course of action. Though it means playing the villain in everyone else's life, I am striving to stand my ground and give my own health and happiness top priority. I appreciate it. Still, thank you for listening, Reddit. Though I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, knowing there are individuals out there that understand even just a small bit helps more than you could possibly imagine. Update 2. Sure, Reddit. Though I realize it has only been 2 days, I am here with another update and things have become even more disorganized. Recall how Ezra stated had been blowing my phone. He realized, though, messaging was insufficient. Yesterday he showed up to my residence without warning. While I was at work, my spouse was home finishing some job-related duties. My husband claims Ezra broke into our house yelling about Mom's worsening illness and how the doctors said time was running short. Saying he would pull me to the hospital personally should he have to, he insisted on knowing where I was. Bless him, my husband attempted to cool Ezra down. Ezra wasn't having it, but I was at work and this wasn't the way to handle things. He charged my spouse of poisoning me against Mom, of turning me against my family. Things grew hot, and Ezra actually swung at my husband. Fortunately, my husband avoided it, but he had to physically restrain Ezra to prevent him from ruckling the apartment in search of me. It grew so nasty that one of our neighbors phoned the police. I arrived home exactly as the cops were leaving. Our living room looked like a tornado had hit. My husband had a bruise on his jaw where Ezra had landed a blow. Though Ezra departed when the police arrived, the harm was done. I was startled. I raised a different younger brother here. This was not the child I would have sacrificed all for. It was like viewing the output of a stranger, and a violent one at that. I hoped to gently talk some sense into Ezra when I called him. I raised him not expecting him to be behaving this way. Great error. He grabbed her and began yelling at me. Every name in the book he called me, accusing me of being self-serving and of not thinking about family. Then he said something I will never forget. I'll never forgive you if Mom dies because of you. You will be dead to me, exactly as you are allowing her to die. I hung there. I was not able to breathe. It seemed as though all of my darkest concerns were realized. Choosing Mom above me, the brother I reared, the one I thought would always have my back, was doing. I disintegrated, full on ugly crying, unable to catch my breath. My husband carried me through it, but I sensed he was also disturbed. We are being pulled apart in general from this. To aggravate things, my dad phoned this morning. Ezra reportedly told him a distorted account of events in our residence. Dad now believes I set my husband on Ezra, that I am the one generating all this conflict. He really had the arrogance to claim that none of this would be happening if I just quit being obstinate and gave the kidney. I vanished. I shared with him all about Mom's infidelity, about the baby she turned over, about her decision to leave us, how it was not only the narcotics. I told him how I had been holding this secret, shielding Mom even now, after everything. I told him it was also his fault and that I had been furious all my life. On the other side of the line, for what seemed like eternity, there was quiet. I then listened to a sob. I had only seen my dad break down perhaps twice in my lifetime. He continued to apologize, stating he didn't know, he should have been there more. I felt terrible. I would have hurt him all over once again in trying to defend myself. But somewhere else I felt relieved as well. At last, someone else was dragging the weight I had carried all my life. Ezra sent me many texts once we hung up. Dad had contacted him and shared everything. Right now, Ezra's song has totally changed. Apologizing, he said he didn't understand and begged me to pardon him. I'm not sure, though, whether I can. I cannot simply ignore the things he said or the way he behaved. Mom has been blowing my phone too. Dad ought to have confronted her about the affair back then as well as the child. Her messages combine calls to understanding with apologies. She is stating she changed and was young and afraid. Young indeed. Dad and brother are still adjusting, looking after her daily. All I can think is, where was this empathy when I was young and terrified? I feel as though I am drowning. Mom's health is declining, Dad's messy, and me? I am merely trying to maintain above water. Not sure what to do going forward. Some of me wants to flee, to vanish as Mom did all those years ago. That is not the solution, but I know. I have too long been gathering the fragments of her errors. I'll create different ones instead. I'm now off from work for some time. To help us to clear our brains, my husband and I are considering a little trip. Except for Dad's, I have blocked every number. I need room to consider what I want and what I need. I'm not sure whether I will ever offer that kidney. Even if I wanted to, the way things are currently makes me not sure I could manage to be in the same room as my family long enough to accomplish it. That brings us to the present situation. The state of my family is disorganized. I'm left wondering if there's any way to sort this mess, or if it's even worth trying, because my brother has exposed a side of himself I never knew existed. I appreciate you paying attention. Reddit. About if I should update once more, I'm unsure. I might even pull the original post. Right now, though, I simply have to concentrate on healing, not only for my mother, but also for me. Final update. Alright Reddit, my last update was some time ago, hence a lot has changed. 3 months following the surgery, I'm writing from home. You did really read correctly. My mom received my kidney donation. Given how fervent I was about not doing it before, I know many of you would find this shocking. I am still processing it personally, believe me. One thing should be clear though, I chose this. Nobody put pressure on me. Not my mom, not even my dad, not Ezra. My spouse and I spent some time away following my last update and discussed it. We leased a cabin in the mountains, no cell service, no internet, just us, nature, and lots of time to reflect. Although I kept having nightmares and knew I would never forgive myself if I did not at least try to help, being away from the turmoil helped clear my thoughts. The idea of my mother dying and of having that on my conscience was intolerable. I came to see that I was furious at the world, at the unfairness of it all, not just at my mother. And clinging to that rage was causing more damage than anyone else could have. I told my spouse my choice when we returned. Though concerned, he was also encouraging. We visited with the doctors, gathered all the data, and began the process. I will not lie, it was not simple. The operation was difficult, and the healing was more so. You know what though? I have not come to regret it. Not because it instantly corrected everything. Rather, I feel at peace with myself for the first time in years. I ran across my mother before they wheeled us in on the day of the procedure. She was weeping and repeatedly thanking me. I told her the truth, that I was acting for me as much as for her. I could not forget, I'd just forgiven her. I hoped she would recover, but I saw no future in which we would live near together. Though she understood, that wasn't what she wanted to hear. Though some things are better left unknown, I wanted to question her about my sister. We hugged, a true hug, not the uncomfortable ones we had exchanged since she returned. In several respects, it felt like a farewell. I am rebuilding our friendship with Ezra. He sincerely apologizes for his actions. Though sluggish, it's an improvement nonetheless. He is beginning to see the sacrifices I made and recognizing that his recollections of our childhood don't tell the complete picture. Parents, Dad has been right by everyone's side during all of this. He is also juggling his own shame and regrets. We now find ourselves getting closer in a manner not seen in years. He shares with me his pride in me, not only for the gift but also for the person I have grown to be despite all. She has been amazing. From the choice until the rehabilitation, he was there at every stage. We have a closer relationship than ever. Regarding myself, I am healing in several different ways. Though the physical rehabilitation has not been simple, the emotional weight I have carried for years seems less. Not foolish enough to believe everything is wonderful right now. My gloomy days and my periods of uncertainty still exist. Still, I'm glad of myself for choosing to be true to who I am, not someone else wanted me to be. To each of you who helped me along this road, thank you. Your comments and your understanding meant more than you could possibly know. Remember, forgiveness is personal and healing is not straightforward. Reddit.